Fishermen discovered a giant clam in coastal waters. It was so enormous that it took more than 10 people to encircle it. There is suspicion that this is the result of nuclear wastewater discharge. An ancient tree in a popular tourist spot has grown excessively. Its roots stretch for 10 miles and attract crowds of tourists. Cracks have appeared in the ground, caused by underground tremors. Many railways were destroyed, resulting in casualties. People said that all these sensational headlines from marketing accounts were no different from the zombie rumors in a neighboring country a few years ago. What's so exciting about a popular girl at school breaking up with someone? Many recognize this girl as the school beauty, Shu Qing-li. Could it be that the goddess Li is breaking up with her boyfriend? The goddess was simply lowering herself for his sake. She got into the prestigious Qingqin University, while her boyfriend couldn't even get into a regular college. They would never be on the same level. It seems this guy's name is Fan Yi. Qing-li told the young man that she realized it was time to end their relationship. High school romances always reach a certain point where they realize they were never right for each other, even though they initially thought otherwise. Besides, it takes courage to spend your whole life together. People need to be on roughly the same level. Shu Qing-li suggested they break up because of this. The girl thought that even if Fan Yi did everything possible to win her back, nothing would help. The onlookers were surprised. Why was Fan Yi silent? Was he so shocked that he'd even lost his voice? Shouldn't he immediately bow down before the school beauty and beg her to come back? Someone like him wasn't worthy of this girl from the very beginning. Fan Yi declared that if Qing-li had nothing more to say, then he would leave first. The girl shouted for the boy to stop. The onlookers thought he was so cold because he was just putting on an act. Fan Yi turned around and asked what else she wanted. Shu Qing-li said that no matter how much he begged her or what he did, she wouldn't go back to him. The young man told Qing-li not to think she was more important than she really was, even though she considered herself the school beauty. The guy added that he was actually very busy. The onlookers were surprised. Could this guy really have broken up with the beauty so quickly and easily? Fan Yi thought that Shu Qing-li and all these people had no idea about the coming crises. They didn't sense it at all. Money, diplomas, everything that was once considered the standard in this society would turn to ashes, scattered by the wind. They have no idea that Fan Yi is no longer the person they knew. He has returned from the future, where a catastrophe occurred, and has been reborn in this timeline. As for Shu Qing-li, to him she is nothing more than an old unfamiliar name that means nothing. Right now, the young man has far more important matters on his mind than the things occupying theirs. It doesn't matter what these people think. Everything will be redefined soon anyway. A real threat. That is what awaits all of humanity on this planet. The story begins last night. A message appeared about the revival of spiritual energy, which will begin in 361 days. When the revival begins, the world will be shaken by unprecedented and unpredictable changes. Societal standards will be completely rewritten. The era of spiritual practitioners will begin. Power will become the only standard. The young man couldn't comprehend what was before him. What was this, and what on earth was happening? This system was created at the edge of the universe. It utilizes a supreme algorithm that preserves cosmic secrets. The system automatically generates spiritual techniques based on the spiritual entities with which the user comes into contact. Fan Yi reached out his hand to make first contact. Fan Yi immediately jumped aside. A terrifying monster pounced on him. Its goal was to intimidate the young man. That would have been his fate if he were an ordinary person. Billions of other people had gone through the same thing. Fan Yi thought, could this be his past life? Now he remembered. Back then, he had been an ordinary man swept away by the flood. He had fought only to survive the catastrophe that had befallen him. But at the same time, the country was crumbling before his eyes and people were dying. In the end, Fan Yi couldn't escape the pursuit of the mutated beasts and perished, desperately longing for revenge. Perhaps that was precisely why the system had chosen this man, giving him a chance to return a year before the beginning of the rebirth of spiritual energy. Back then, no one had any sense of the events to come. Fan Yi decided to use this year to turn any phenomenon caused by spiritual energy to his advantage. The system is conducting a new evaluation. The user is bound to the system. A new path has opened. Everything in this world can be used as material for creating techniques. It is necessary to gather powerful abilities, create unique techniques, become an invincible practitioner, and save this world. An announcer on a massive screen reported that the situation humanity is currently facing is extremely dangerous and extraordinary. People cannot rely on past experience. They must adapt on their own. That was all. The authorities did not issue any reassuring statements or deny the strange phenomena. On the contrary, they advised citizens to be cautious and vigilant. You could say this is a kind of warning from the country, but without unnecessary details. In the past, such statements about supernatural phenomena would have been immediately deleted to prevent them from spreading. But in this case, a simple and calm announcement is a fairly well-known approach that the country of Xia has used to allow people to prepare psychologically without causing unnecessary panic. It's tedious and time-consuming, but the outcome will be better than that of the neighboring country, which has descended into chaos, lawlessness, and looting. Fan Yi recalled that the system had said, anything can be used to create techniques, so when a strange phenomenon occurs, one must be there. Fan Yi received a warning from Qingchen University for new students. You must protect yourselves from the sun. The students were surprised. Are universities now jumping on the media hype bandwagon too? Can the temperature really kill people? This must be fake news. Most likely they just bought their way into the trend. Fan Yi looked up and saw birds falling from the sky. But could the weather really change that drastically? The university is only a 15-minute drive from here. It all seems a bit suspicious. A notification appeared stating that student registration would proceed as scheduled. Students and faculty are advised to avoid the North Gate due to high levels of ultraviolet radiation. All other entrances are safe. Fan Yi thought that when faced with any unfamiliar phenomenon, most people don't pay it any mind. They think it's just a joke or a common prank. The young man thought this was his chance. The young man arrived at the North Gate. There were almost no people there. The young man thought that something was definitely wrong with this place. The few people there were fleeing, for the heat was unbearable. The glowing droplets piqued the young man's interest. He crouched down and reached out his hand. The young man touched one of the droplets, and immediately a bright glow appeared. A strong solar energy disturbance was detected. A template of solar attributes was revealed. It was as if an electric charge had pierced the young man's entire body. He groaned in pain. People watching from the sidelines saw a bright flash and thought it looked like a hallucination. Could this be a super saiyan? The young man continued to writhe in pain and scream loudly. After a while, the formation was complete. The system reported that the user had acquired the technique. It was the golden breath of the sun, Qingchen University, freshman orientation day. Young people lined up in a queue. It was registration for freshmen. People offered to help them with their luggage. People who wanted to help asked which building the young woman was heading to. They were willing to accompany her. Someone handed her a company brochure and suggested exchanging contact information. The girl calmly turned them all down and said she didn't need anything. Xu Tingli looked at the young people and decided they were acting like lovesick fools. After all, they wanted to see each other every day. A huge flash appeared behind Qingli. Immediately after that, an announcement appeared stating that there was a heat wave at the North Gate. Students were advised to avoid the North Gate. Xu Tingli thought that too many strange things had been happening lately. She couldn't ignore it. She had to see everything with her own eyes. The North Gate of Qingchen University. In the deserted square, a figure could be seen enveloped in a bright glow, with an excess of energy concentrated around it. Gazing at the scorching sun and breathing in the searing heat, the user can harness the golden breath of the sun to strengthen their body. The new technique was automatically mastered. Additional points were earned. The young man was surprised. What points were they talking about? What on earth was this? The guy decided to figure it out later. The students immediately began discussing the phenomenon they had witnessed. After that flash, the sky suddenly darkened. A chill filled the air. A crowd gathered at the North Gate. University President Qingchen asked why so many people had gathered. Hadn't it been announced that students should stay away from this place? A woman standing next to the university president, her face hidden under a hood, ordered the perimeter to be re-established and the area around the North Gate to be completely sealed off. The Level A contamination zone had been cleared. The young man was surprised. Could this really be a contamination zone officially designated by the Xia government? So he wasn't alone here? An alarm sounded. All unauthorized personnel must immediately evacuate the isolated area near the North Gate. The young man concluded that the people in military uniforms were members of the army. But what was going on here? The young man decided it was too noisy here and that he had attracted attention, so he needed to leave. The hooded woman stared intently in the direction the young man had disappeared. The woman touched the trail left by the young man, sniffed it, and said that this was no accident. Could it be that someone had already begun to resonate with spiritual energy? Li also realized that this wasn't a coincidence. Could it really be spiritual energy? And what on earth was going on here? What had happened couldn't have been a simple performance. The girl thought, could the man she had just seen really have been Fan Yi? Li immediately dismissed these thoughts. She couldn't be so naive. With such mediocre abilities, he couldn't have gotten into Qingchen University. Back at home, Fan Yi lay on his bed trying to make sense of what was happening. The heat just wouldn't leave his body. Neither a cold shower nor the air conditioner helped. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. The young man suddenly realized, what if someone had seen him in all the commotion today? He had to check. Information appeared in the chat rooms that the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners had updated its rating system. It was an online group that occasionally posted rules for spiritual training. At one time, everyone thought it was just some writer mixing elements of fantasy about spiritual rebirth with real life. Could the people he'd seen earlier really be representatives of this association? However, the announcements looked genuine, and they even came from an official agency of the country of Xia. In his past life, the young man had never heard of this association. Back then, he was an ordinary person and had no idea that something like this existed. When the disaster struck, there simply wasn't time for anything else. He thought only of how to survive. Maybe the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners was an official signal from the government for those who had awakened early? The young man decided to try restarting the golden breath of the sun. Sitting in the lotus position, the young man rose above the bed, and his body glowed, radiating energy. Step 1. Strengthen the body so that it becomes an instrument capable of absorbing the energy of heaven and earth, as if it had turned into a living weapon. It is necessary to control spiritual energy and take the form of a divine axe. The system reported that the user had reached the rank of First Star Phantom Axe. The user can use the glasses to forcibly embed the received data into any object. Fan Yi looked at the items on the nearby nightstand. Fan Yi wondered if these counted as objects. The young man focused his energy on them. The glass on the nightstand rose into the air. Fan Yi decided he had guessed correctly. Forced implantation means endowing an object with magical properties, a supernatural ability. The glass acquired the attribute of the sun. But what if it were a pistol, a sword, or something else? Would it become his personal weapon? Judging by the system, he would be able to gather data for many more attributes in the future. Fan Yi thought that a weapon with supernatural powers, created specifically for him, would be extremely useful in the future. It was better to start experimenting now. If it worked, then next time he would create a real weapon. This was a new beginning, and with the appearance of mutated beasts, he needed to be fully prepared. At that moment, a strange creature appeared outside, near the house. It was definitely a mutated beast. Fan Yi was sleeping peacefully in his bed. Suddenly, the young man opened his eyes, hearing a strange sound. He thought there was a rat nearby. Voices were coming from the neighboring house. But how could the sounds made by a pet resemble those of a rat? Since the young man had reached the rank of spiritual axe, his hearing had become keener. Therefore, hearing sounds from neighboring houses was quite normal. Fan Yi looked at the front door and thought something was off. The protagonist opened the door, peered outside, and saw a huge mutant looming overhead. It was a mutated rabbit. His memories of his past life were hazy, but when he saw the creature again, a chill ran down his spine. A helicopter circled over the city at night, illuminating the area in search of the mutant. The girl watching from the sidelines said that the creature that had swallowed the dark spirit's fruit was still on the loose. She added that this entity was incredibly fast and emphasized that she wanted to be kept informed of developments. Step by step, she closed in on her target, moving swiftly through the city at night. The girl received information that the target had appeared. Its aura had been detected. The pursuer said she had picked up the trail of its dark energy. The target had fled to a residential area 20 kilometers from here. Caution is required. The target has just swallowed the fruit of the dark spirit, so the transformation is not yet complete. He may continue to evolve and grow stronger, so we must not take our eyes off him. A man looking out the window at the city at night saw something extremely unusual. The man rubbed his eyes and said that because of his job, he was already starting to see hallucinations. A colleague asked why the guy was frozen, staring out the window. Had he really forgotten that they were on the 65th floor? A huge mutant rabbit growled loudly and lunged at the young man. The young man didn't lose his composure and with a sharp kick, sent the mutant flying to the side. Fan Yi noticed that his body had changed significantly after his breakthrough. Now he could see his opponent clearly. and the opponent's movements seemed slowed down. His muscles reacted so quickly that he could dodge the attacker's strikes. But why had this terrifying mutated creature appeared now? Judging by his memories from his past life, it hadn't yet completed its transformation. At this stage, the dark energy increases not only its strength, but also its madness. Fan Yi decided he had to stop this mutant. Otherwise, everyone in this building would become its meal. Fan Yi figured that the monster's weak spot was its tail. He had to take advantage of that. The young man attacked the mutant and delivered a crushing blow to its torso. Under the force of the impact, the rabbit screamed loudly and was sent flying far backward. The blow was so powerful that it tore a hole in the monster's body. Fan Yi was surprised. Could it be that the mutant was absorbing his yang energy? The power of the sun is fierce and majestic. This rabbit seemed to be courting its own destruction. The neighbors were surprised. Was there thunder outside? A man looked out the window, but the street was quiet. Fan Yi jumped outside to give chase. Further investigation was necessary. Fan Yi thought that this rabbit had just been acting as if it were ravenously hungry, as if it wanted to devour all the energy in his body. Although it possessed the dark element, it attacked fiercely, despite the yang element suppressing and neutralizing it. The rabbit was indeed very hungry. The beast mutation had already begun. If Fan Yi were an ordinary person who hadn't yet awakened, everyone here today would simply have become its food to satisfy the monster's hunger. To counter such threats, more techniques must be gathered. The pursuer continued moving toward her target in the designated direction. The girl saw what was left of the mutant. Could it be that he was dead? She reported that the target had been destroyed, the body torn to pieces. She began collecting the remaining dark energy. Upon touching the remains, the girl felt a heat. But why was this happening? The top-tier yang energy, with its pure concentration, was exactly the same as that at the northern gate of Qingchen University. This couldn't be a mere coincidence. The girl reported to headquarters that the mutant rabbit had been destroyed. However, she wasn't the one who did it. A new pioneer with a high-level elemental affinity had appeared. The interlocutor asked, could it be that the person who cleared the contaminated zone at the north gate of Qingchen University and destroyed the mutated rabbit is the same person? Although he is only at the first stage of the spiritual acts, his element is extremely pure, exactly like the yang element in the northern part of the city. The operator confirmed that he was not in the headquarters archives. The association must contact such a talented pioneer at any cost. The pursuer said she fully agreed. At the same time, to leave no traces, two types of flames flared up in the girl's hands, one of which was dark. The girl decided to put all her current tasks on hold. The top priority was to track down the pioneer and document everything related to him. She needed to convince him to join the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners. The girl said she was very tired and needed a cup of milk tea right now. She thought, who is this mysterious person? In fact, the association was right. A person with such power must be a true expert. She must meet him at any cost. Fan Yi woke up at dawn. Today began with a morning where the sparkling sunlight illuminated his body. Waking up early motivated him to train even harder. Feeling the morning light, the young man activated the golden sun breathing technique. Fan Yi thought that as soon as he reached the ghost axe level, he began to feel the technique's energy forming into thin threads around the divine axe. Could he really advance to the next level so quickly? During training, the young man swung his weapon and thought that the axe felt much lighter than the day before. Training was just like chopping wood. No secrets, just persistence. The protagonist had advanced to the second star in the Ghost Axe rank. It was truly impressive. The young man's body had become stronger and more resilient than before. Fan Yi thought that, even though he was progressing quickly, it was partly due to the energy left over from his last breakthrough, which he hadn't yet fully expended. From this point on, he needed to move forward step by step. Still, training inside the building was dangerous. It would be better to find a quiet, secluded spot. The headquarters of the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association. The association's president was at his desk. The man said that a wave of solar energy had been detected. Could it be him again? The young man sitting on the bank of the forest river decided to check the information in the status window. Fan Yi confirmed that he wanted to use the glasses to infuse his weapon with solar energy. As he did so, it immediately lit up. The young man thought that last time he had tried using a fake knife as a weapon, but despite its successful creation, it couldn't withstand the sun's energy. It seemed that not every object was suitable for use as a weapon. Fan Yi decided that this time he sensed it. The sword possessed the same inner strength as he did. Therefore, their compatibility should be extremely high. The programming was complete. Fan Yi decided to test the weapon. After some practice, the young man was pleased that he hadn't set the mountain on fire. The sound was quite loud, smoke rose, and attracted a lot of attention. He needed to get out of there quickly. The girl saw a column of smoke not far beyond the forest and quickly headed in that direction. She was very afraid of being late. She had just gone out to buy milk tea using a discount and ended up missing the opportunity again. It was some kind of streak of bad luck. Upon arriving at the scene, the girl didn't understand why the river was boiling or what he was doing there. The girl burst into tears. She'd be criticized again. Ever since this guy showed up, nothing had gone right. Looking ahead, the pursuer was greatly surprised. This can't be. Just last night, his aura was at the level of a 1-star ghost axe, and now it had risen to 2. Moreover, it possessed an incredibly powerful aura. Could this be a spiritual weapon? A spiritual weapon is one in which spiritual properties have been imbued, allowing an ordinary weapon to unleash supernatural powers. The pursuer thought that spiritual weapons were extremely rare. Even within the association, there were only 2 of them. The technique for embedding spiritual cores was still incomplete, and the technology was limited. Mass production wasn't even being considered yet. How had this man managed to obtain a spiritual weapon? The girl decided she must have imagined something or made a mistake. In any case, it was better to start sorting out this mess. She could start by cooling the river current. Fan Yi thought that his weapon now contained the sun element, but the system hadn't said whether it was possible to have just one. The earlier system had indicated that different techniques could be created. If he obtained other elements, would he be able to integrate them into this weapon? Fan Yi reviewed the relevant information and realized that even the official army was mostly at the ghost axe level. The young man learned about the new contaminated area and decided to open the letter he had received containing the archive. The contaminated area, known as the Dark Dragon of the Burning River, was formed due to cracks in the Earth's crust. The dark river had spilled out there. The flow of water had turned into molten lava, causing the temperature in the area to become extremely high. The Binmu region is a mountainous area covered in dense vegetation. The young people asked Lao Li when her friend would arrive. The girl replied, "Very soon. Thanks to Xiao's map, it was easy to get here." The girl thanked the young people for coming and for exploring this place with her. Once they went inside, they would need to look out for one another. This was Zhang Xiaoya, an employee of the Ministry of Culture and a member of the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association. The girl regretted that there were no strong and promising pioneers among them whom she could recommend to the association. Many pioneers don't know that the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners is actually an official body of the country of Xia. To become an official employee, one needs a very high level of proficiency. You can't get in through ordinary means. Zhang Xiaoya thought that if nothing came of it this time either, she would have to work even harder again. Finally, Fan Yi arrived. The young man greeted everyone. Zhang Xiaoya thought this guy looked very young. Could his strength really be at the level of a 2-star ghost axe? It seemed strange. Although his aura was very powerful, he didn't give off any aggression. On the contrary, his aura was very warm. Xiaoya said that since everyone was gathered, they should go inside. Fan Yi said he would take the lead. The girl would hold the lantern. Xiaoya told Fan Yi not to rush. There might be rocks inside. It wasn't as hot inside as they had initially expected. Perhaps they hadn't reached the center of the contamination yet. Fan Yi thought that even though he had arrived last, this group accepted him as one of their own. These people were looking for a reliable ally, which was why they were all so sincere. Zhang Xiaoya said they had finally arrived. Ahead of the group was a massive pool of lava. Fan Yi immediately rushed forward. Xiaoya shouted that it was dangerous ahead and not to rush, but the young man didn't listen to her. Fan Yi walked to the edge and dipped his hand into the scorching lava. The young people decided that this guy had definitely lost his mind. He needed help immediately. Suddenly, a massive flash erupted. Lava spatter flew in all directions. Information was received that a celestial and terrestrial phenomenon had been detected. Maximum computing power was activated for analysis, and the process is being recorded. The technique of the bloody fire sword was activated. The high temperature of the inner flame carries an explosive element. Its power is truly destructive. The squad saw that the young man was perfectly fine. His weapon absorbs the power of the lava. One of the squad members said that Fan Yi had recovered. This could be called a minor incident during practice. Now that the spiritual energy here has stabilized, they can continue their practice. The young man said he could feel a change in the energy. Now it could be absorbed without hindrance. Another participant said he would officially embark on the path of spiritual practice. Zhang Xiaoya announced that she was here only to collect data. Everyone could train in peace. She would monitor the situation. The girl noticed the arrival of other pioneers. One of the new arrivals asked where all this trash had come from. They had to clean up. This place was now occupied. Xiaoya thought that all three of the new arrivals were at the first star Ghost Axe level. The enemy was strong. Her squad wouldn't be able to handle them. It wasn't worth getting involved with them. Zhang Xiaoya said anyway that they had arrived at this place first. Her friends had already begun absorbing spiritual energy. If these people didn't mind, they could join them. One of the pioneers laughed and asked if this girl had even reached the Ghost Axe level. They needed to leave this place immediately. Zhang Xiaoya understood that in the era of spiritual energy revival, the principle of survival of the fittest applied. During this period of wild growth, weak pioneers didn't deserve the resources needed to become strong. However, the country of Xia cracked down on such cases. As a member of the association, she had to do something. Fan Yi approached the bully and said that this guy was big and strong, but all he could do was pick on weak girls. The young man held his fire sword in his hand. Fan Yi swung his sword at his opponent, and everything around them was illuminated by a bright flame. The stranger scattered in all directions. Fan Yi thought that it was precisely because of the survival of the fittest principle that spiritual practitioners experience conflicts that could not be resolved. It was impossible to intimidate these people with mere words or inaction. Fan Yi thrust his spiritual weapon forward and told those scoundrels to get out immediately. The villain saw another explosion and was terrified. What kind of monster was standing before him? The pioneers turned around and all three left the area. Fear haunted them for a long time afterward. Zhang Xiaoya was extremely surprised. The squad members said that Fan Yi turned out to be incredibly cool. Fan Yi smiled and said that they were all about equally strong and suggested they leave. After all, they had already leveled up. Zhang Xiaoya surmised that there was no more spiritual energy left in this contaminated area. It really was time to leave. Zhang Xiaoya thought that if that strike had hit its mark, there would have been nothing left here but a few charred bodies. This guy is truly a high-level pioneer with rare attributes. On top of that, he has incredible talent. It's absolutely necessary to report this to the organization. At the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association office, the secretary asked Xiaoya, "Has another high-level pioneer with a rare attribute appeared again?" Xiaoya was surprised. What did "again" mean? The secretary said the word meant nothing. She just said it offhand and added that she'd be waiting for news. Standing behind the girl was the association's chairman. The girl hung up the phone and told the president that they were lucky. 2 high-level pioneers in a row. The president noted that these outstanding individuals with high stats now possessed noble status, were highly valued, and would occupy influential positions in the future. The man sighed and added that the situation was far from simple. He even thought it would be better to resign. Passers-by looked at the young man and thought he looked impressive. His sword seemed like a true masterpiece. Where had he crafted it? This man was the pinnacle of perfection among men. In fact, Fan Yi was attracting unwanted attention. He needed to change his image. Fan Yi was curious about what people were saying on social media about what had happened. Reports stated that the 1,000-year-old cave temple had been bathed in golden light, and a purple mist lay on the ground. Someone had even managed to film a huge dragon flying over the temple. The young man thought all this was connected to the element of inner flame. He hadn't been careful enough, though it would be strange if a force of 2,000 degrees hadn't caused an anomaly. It couldn't have been Lao Li or Zhang Xiaoya who unleashed it. Fan Yi pushed these thoughts aside and decided to focus on the back hill. 5 minutes later, on the hill behind Fan Yi's house, landscape restoration expert Su Qinying finished her work with the shovel. The girl looked up and saw a bright flash behind the tops of the pine trees. She thought it was a powerful aura. That person must be somewhere in the mountains. Could someone have reached the 3rd star of the Ghost Axe rank? Could a first-rank breakthrough really cause such a storm? This goes beyond mere talent. Su Qinying decided she had to check this out immediately. Could this be that guy? If so, she had to catch him. Above the young man, energy swirls caused by his transformation rose vertically upward. Su Qinying approached the spot and realized he was forming the power of the Ghost Axe. Could he already control spiritual energy so skillfully? This man had likely been training for several hundred years without anyone knowing. Su Qinying recalled that when she had tried to reach the 3rd star of the Ghost Axe rank, she had failed and spent a week bedridden, bleeding out. She didn't even want to think about it. Even with her physical conditioning, she hadn't been able to handle it. Where on earth had this monster come from? Inexhaustible spiritual energy, flawless control, Every swing of the ghost axe, every drop of spiritual energy, seemed honed by thousands of training sessions. This man wasn't just a monster, he was like a deity who had descended to earth. Moreover, when many people feel they're on the verge of breaking through to a new rank, they rush to achieve results. But this man acts calmly, confidently, and maturely, like a previously unknown master. Su Gunying determined that the phantom axe was moving. It must be somewhere to the east. The system reported that the user had solidified the ghost axe's rank at the 2nd star. The young man sensed structural transformations. Su Qinying had already noticed from a distance the changes in the environment caused by these transformations. However, she was too late again. Although no more than half a minute had passed, the young man was already gone. Most likely, he had noticed she was following him. This meant she wouldn't be able to convince him to cooperate. Su Qinying assumed the young man must be nearby. Fang Yi, watching the girl from a branch of a nearby tree, thought that this was the very person who had been following him for several days. Su Gunying, addressing the young man, said that she was the captain of the Fireflies squad of the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association, as well as a pioneer. She was there on behalf of the association to sincerely invite the young man to join them. She added that she had been watching him for several days for this very purpose. Now she sincerely hoped that the young man hadn't misunderstood her intentions. Furthermore, even though the association wasn't yet open to the general public, they had all the necessary official documents. Su Gunying wondered if this guy would find her words offensive. Maybe he'd think she was too pushy. She needed to be more careful with her wording and maintain a gentle, friendly tone. Su Gunying realized that a person like this was unlikely to fall for false compliments. Was there any point in speaking empty words at all? Su Gunying noticed that the Xia Kingdom wanted to find and unite the pioneers to make them more organized and provide them with additional protection. Right now, the pioneers were developing in a chaotic manner, and she understood that joining the association might restrict his freedom. After all, they will all have to face the revival of spiritual energy and unknown enemies. Fan Yi said he might refuse, as he does not yet fully trust the association. The girl picked up the document and said her name was Su Qinying. She used to be an ordinary athlete. The young man could verify the authenticity of the documents. Fan Yi remembered something. People with good innate abilities are more likely to become pioneers. No wonder she runs so well. Based on the situation in his past life, the Jia country never achieved its goal. As a result, all of human civilization was destroyed. But now that he had started over, with the system at his disposal, he was bound to become part of those events. However, the time had not yet come. Fan Yi said he remembered this girl. Su Qinying was genuinely delighted. The young man added that he would think about the offer and left the location. The young man immediately appeared behind his companion and warned her that she must temporarily hide his tracks from others. Fan Yi thought that, judging by Su Qinying's behavior, the association now completely avoids conflicts with pioneers like him. This allows him to use the association to his advantage. Su Qinying said she would cooperate with the young man, but his breakthrough had already been noticed by the association, and she would have to report it anyway. Fan Yi replied that so be it. Fan Yi vanished without a trace once again. The girl thought she had failed to catch him again. So much effort had been spent trying to decipher the clues left by this great master. She would have to accept it. However, carrying out a mission outside the city wasn't so bad either. A report came in about the appearance of anomalies. Su Qinying grew wary. Could it be happening again? Could it be those same strange and vicious creatures again? The girl couldn't forget them. Anomalies can manifest as disasters and monsters. They feed on energy from contaminated zones, mutate into monsters, and devour people. Or they transform into natural disasters, claiming territory for themselves. Because of this, even more contaminated zones appear. If the anomalies aren't destroyed, they'll continue to wreak havoc, constantly terrifying people. As he moved through the city, the young man sensed a dense concentration of storm energy and its unbridled fury. Fan Yi left the city, knowing that the center of the storm was at the top of the mountain. A contaminated zone has been detected, Mount Yuhuang, one of the city's major tourist attractions. The level of contamination is unknown. The association's headquarters was also monitoring the mountain. According to spiritual energy concentration data, the danger level at the summit is rising rapidly. The summit must be immediately isolated and new contaminated zones declared. The association's president noted that the situation arose suddenly and is extremely serious. Su Qinying had been sent on another assignment but had to be recalled urgently. She will now provide more details. Qinying told the council members that Mount Yuhuang has become inaccessible, and spiritual energy with the element of thunder is rapidly spiraling out of control. It is highly explosive. At this time, this zone has been assigned a Class A contamination level. If the situation continues to develop at the same pace, the peak could be assigned an S level. An emergency plan must be developed immediately. However, according to intelligence reports, there is no one in this area who could approach the zone. Even 3-star Ghost Axe pioneers have a 100% chance of death, according to simulation results. The officer suggested, in that case, blocking the roads from the very foot of the mountain, setting up around-the-clock patrol to ensure no one climbs up, and deploying reconnaissance drones around the mountain. The president agreed. The problem must be resolved thoroughly, and the mountain must be completely sealed off. The young man standing in the danger zone thought, "It's a good thing he has the golden breath of the sun technique." However, that wasn't enough. To extract the purest lightning energy, one had to reach the very epicenter, the mountain's summit. In this era of spiritual rebirth, humanity not only stands to gain little, but also risks ending up at the bottom of the food chain if it remains inactive. It's not just global climate change. Even small creatures like rabbits and mice can now pose a threat to humans. Fan Yi understood that in the future, entities more terrifying than any known monsters might appear. Even spiritual practices might prove powerless against them. Even his own practice is still insufficient. Earlier, our hero had infused both elements into his blade. The solar element enhances the blade's strength and durability, while the technique of the Bloodfire sword amplifies its destructive power. However, excessive reliance on weapons creates numerous vulnerabilities. Only the spiritual practitioner's personal strength will allow him to defeat cruel and cunning enemies and gain the upper hand. The power of thunder concentrated here is a unique chance to strengthen one's own body. To grow stronger, one must seek opportunities in a changing world. Otherwise, there will be nothing left but to await destruction from new catastrophes. Fan Yi felt a powerful resistance emanating from the mountain. It was an incredibly potent energy, like the furious wrath of the heavens. Fan Yi felt this force pressing down on him. It raged because he had invaded its forbidden zone. It wanted him to kneel. How could he subdue it? Fan Yi tried to think calmly. The system warned him he needed to make direct contact with the spiritual energy itself. The golden breath of the sun was activated and at full power. The protagonist understood that he had to hold out and reach the mountain's peak. He faced a wild, dense, lightning-like energy. Even just breathing, the young man felt his muscles go numb. A report came in about powerful lightning energy. Data is being processed. An employee said he had never seen lightning like this in his entire life. Could someone from the higher realms be undergoing a heavenly trial? But if lightning strikes the city, it could pierce through the roof. The user has acquired the technique Great Power of Divine Thunder. By summoning heavenly lightning and tempering his body, the young man himself becomes godlike. The lightning element is the supreme power, intended for attack and destruction. Unlike the solar element, lightning can temper the body, transforming flesh into energy. In ancient times, spiritual practitioners merged with lightning, absorbing it into themselves. Their bodies became like mountains, indestructible and eternal. Fan Yi said that now lightning was his spear and shield. The young man felt that lightning was not only destruction, but also purification and rebirth. It strengthened his muscles and bones, yet he felt not a shred of pain. It was the purest power of heavenly justice, destroying all evil. Now he could infuse this power into his sword. If he added lightning, the blade would become stronger, though this might disrupt the purity of the solar element. Moreover, too many elements could simply shatter the blade. To avoid this, the protagonist decided to embed the essence into his right hand. The next morning, people appeared at the summit of Mount Yuhuang. Colonel Han Li reported that a pioneer had been here. Powerful charges still lingered in the air. Su Jinying told the colonel that things here hadn't gone as they'd expected. The contamination level at the mountaintop had dropped from peak to mild in 3 hours. Did the colonel really think there had been another pioneer here? The girl touched the tracks and said she couldn't trace the element or pinpoint the exact time of departure. Perhaps too much time had passed, and the night's downpour might have washed away all traces. The colonel surmised that he had most likely left the summit around 8 p.m., having emerged safe and sound. The anomaly was detected around 6 p.m. The base of the mountain was cordoned off by 7 p.m. This means he must have climbed up earlier. Otherwise, he would have been spotted. The colonel noted that the most powerful lightning surge at the summit occurred at exactly 7 o'clock. They had expected the contamination level to reach Class S by dawn, but after 8 o'clock, the intensity of the surge dropped sharply. The colonel surmised that this man possessed abilities related to the element of lightning. That was why he had withstood the trials. For him, this anomaly had turned out to be a tremendous opportunity. The officer noted that the man had not only survived, but also reduced the concentration of spiritual energy. Otherwise, it would have been too strange a coincidence. Did he stumble upon the source of power by accident, or did he intentionally get ahead of them and make contact with the anomaly? The commander stated that such people are the most dangerous. It is unclear whose side they are on. If he poses a threat to society, the consequences could be no less severe than those of the anomaly itself. He must be located immediately. The officer announced that from this moment on, the man must be found as quickly as possible and at any cost. His temporary call sign is Tyrant. The leadership hoped that the association would be able to recruit Tyrant as soon as possible. They will try to keep the information confidential and conduct an investigation immediately. An employee reported that they had one high-level pioneer who was currently attempting to make contact. Su Qinying reported the current situation to Colonel Han Li. She was referring to the pioneer who had previously cleared the Level A contamination zone at the north gate of Qingcheng University. Su Qinying added that she had been trying to contact him constantly lately. However, he appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Not long ago, she discovered the body of a mutated rabbit that this man had killed. He possesses the element of the sun. The girl promised to track him down and find out how he had cleared the university's north gate. The officer praised the girl for her good work. They need young talent like her. Su Qinying said she would definitely continue to do her best and fulfill her duty. The colonel suggested to the association president that they release some fake news to simulate an emergency. The officer also said that information about spiritual energy shouldn't be published online. It could be exploited by ill-wishers. While at home, the protagonist used the golden breath of the sun. His clothes were cleansed and took on a fresh scent. The young man said that when the lightning element was infused, he could truly feel the changes. His right hand underwent a physical transformation. Under the influence of lightning, it became the strongest and most durable part of his body. The changes were immense. The young man surmised that he was approaching a new threshold of development. What surprised him most was that lightning, originally an aggressive and untamable element, had become obedient, easy, and smooth to control after its integration. When Fanny first activated the golden breath of the sun, the pain was unbearable. He hardly wanted to recall it. Could it be that after absorption, the element somehow weakens? The system reported that lightning deals triple critical damage to anomalies. He needed to test this in action as soon as possible. A new message appeared. Fan Yi thought it was ill-timed again. Could something have happened? After the recent incident, the young man had immediately set up special notifications for news and forums. The world is currently in a state of great upheaval. To protect ordinary people, the country of Shia sends out emergency alerts first and foremost. For pioneers like our hero, these alerts are also a source of immense opportunity. It's worth taking the risk, even if there's a chance of facing great danger. A report came in about an explosion at a chemical plant. There were no casualties. The explosion caused contamination within the city. The causes are being investigated. It was hard for the young man to believe that all of this was an accident. Witnesses spoke of a sinister, cold smell. It definitely reminded our hero of something. The protagonist recalled, in his past life, it was a sinister creature, a huge mutant resembling a predatory rodent. Fan Yi thought, could it really be them again? These creatures love to appear in dark places. Initially, they behaved like wild animals or plants, but after mutating, they gained intelligence. Their strength is staggering. Their vision, grip, and speed of destruction are monstrously developed and terrifying. These creatures are far more dangerous than the mutated rabbit. He had to be there tonight. He couldn't let them survive and evolve any further. Fan Yi decided to test what his triple critical damage was capable of in real combat. The squad of destroyers reported to headquarters that they had been tracking the anomaly from file number 7, Night Candle. However, the target has been temporarily lost. The abilities of Night Candle are known. It blends into the darkness of night, conceals its body, and emits a barely audible crackling sound up close. It feeds on human flesh. The team leader said that in this kind of weather, Night Candle would definitely start hunting. The man added that they cannot allow that to happen. The operator at headquarters confirmed receipt of the message. Additional information will be added to the file. Headquarters reported that the request for a sweep and elimination operation has been approved and assigned. Priority B, estimated response time is within 24 hours. The demolition squad received orders to continue surveillance to ensure maximum security. The squad commander thought that 12 hours wasn't exactly fast. However, that was the maximum the headquarters could allocate. With surges of mutations and awakenings occurring across the country, it was understandably overloaded. The operator reported that there were operatives from the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners in the area where the squad was located. Currently, Su Qinying, captain of the Fireflies squad, was there on a mission to monitor the pioneers. They could contact her and ask for temporary assistance. The request was sent. After a while, the girl asked the squad commander when she had become so famous. Su Qinying asked if she had been called in for overtime. The commander said that this time they were dealing with the night candle anomaly. This anomaly devours people. This is no time for jokes about overtime. The girl was surprised. Could it be that people are being called for help with such an attitude? Su Qinying suggested that this squad of destroyers was so highly skilled that they didn't need any help. In that case, the Fireflies squad wouldn't be involved. She added that their commander was very strict. What if this squad really could be swallowed up? The squad commander apologized and admitted he had been harsh. He was counting on their help in finding the night candle. Everyone knew how dangerous it was. The Firefly's ability to track and pinpoint its location would be extremely useful. If they were devoured, the people in the city would surely perish. Su Qinying said she wouldn't joke around anymore. In fact, she had no intention of refusing. The commander explained that the creature is extremely cunning, operates only in the dark, hides, and makes almost no sound. Because of this, it is very difficult to catch. But once it eats a person, it will be impossible to stop. Su Qinying promised to help catch the night candle. Fang Yi said he could smell it. The scent was too pungent, unusually heavy. The young man, standing at the highest point, looked around and thought warily, could it really have evolved that much already? The Fireflies in the demolition squad were closely watching the surroundings. The target had been found. Based on Night Candle's file, it was clear what she was into: dark, damp places and eating people. The squad commander ordered the sabotage team to prepare for the start of the operation. However, the target sensed the presence of people and tried to escape, breaking through the wall and leaping outside. The monster stopped abruptly because one of the Punishers appeared ahead. The hunters took up positions around the perimeter, and the target was surrounded. The monster bared its teeth and lunged at the people, emitting strange, alarming sounds. Su Qinying shouted that caution was needed. The sound waves were dangerous. The hunters retreated to a safe distance and reported that they had the situation under control. The commander of the punitive squad noted that Night Candle was extremely powerful. If they hadn't retreated in time, they would certainly have been wounded. He thought, if this destructive force isn't brought under control, disaster awaits the city. Night Candle began to destroy the ground beneath it. Su Qinying surmised that the creature was trying to escape by digging a tunnel. The corrosive dark energy destroys matter upon contact, and they didn't have a strong enough counterforce. Even if the creature could melt the ground, it wouldn't be able to create a tunnel instantly. They couldn't break formation. They had to proceed with caution. The main task was to collect real-time data and adjust their combat strategy. Night Candle broke through the blockade and managed to escape the encirclement. The commander said we must not let it evade pursuit. The hunters rushed in pursuit. Su Qinying noticed that the concentration of spiritual energy had risen sharply. The captain said she would verify the information. Everyone must remain outside. Su Qinying and the squad members found themselves inside an abandoned factory. The girl noted that they needed to assess the concentration of spiritual energy first. The squad commander asked, "Was this new support device developed by the association?" The girl confirmed it. The readings showed that the maximum energy concentration a single team could withstand was 50 units. However, the current concentration had just exceeded 80 units and was continuing to rise at a frantic pace. It seemed like there was a massive anomaly here. A huge monster resembling a giant snake was descending upon the squad members from above. Su Qinying sensed something was wrong and looked back. The girl screamed that there was another anomalous creature here. Night Candle had lured them here on purpose. They needed to retreat immediately. They couldn't stay here long. Su Qinying said they needed to head for the gate. If the anomaly tried to stop them, she would have to reveal their location. Together, they would be able to open the gate. However, a strange gas appeared in the room. The girl felt her entire body being poisoned by this substance. Su Qinying opened her eyes and asked her companions if they were okay. There was no one nearby. The girl thought she was alone in this abandoned factory, but they must be somewhere nearby. She just couldn't sense them, and they couldn't answer her. If she remembered correctly, they had been lured here on purpose. In reality, this was the lair of another anomaly. There was a possibility that it was a giant snake. Unlike the night candle, which used dark energy, this mist was toxic. They had been here from the moment they entered. The toxic gas suppresses the senses and accelerates the depletion of spiritual energy. If she uses spiritual energy for defense, it will quickly run out. Su Gunying felt her spiritual energy was nearly depleted. Without a shield, she could die. What kind of monster is this? It possesses combat intelligence and overwhelming power. It cunningly sets traps. Su Gunying looked up and saw a flash, against which a stranger appeared. The young man had made a hole in the roof and entered the room. Fang Yi looked at the enormous snake and immediately realized it was a dark-type anomaly. The next moment, the young man was attacked by the night candle. From the other side, a dark-type anomaly joined the attack. The protagonist realized there were two anomalies here. One anomaly lures and sets traps, while the other is responsible for destruction. It's a cunning duo. Now it's clear why the place is so saturated with spiritual energy. Fang Yi said that now his opponents could taste his lightning. A corresponding strike followed. The snake took damage. The protagonist said it was the rodent's turn. It too was afraid of fire. The enormous snake was wounded, but still had strength left and counterattacked. The young man was sent flying backward, but immediately jumped back to his feet. Fang Yi drew his sword and shouted for the monster to watch the blade. In the next moment, the snake was split in two, but that didn't solve the problem entirely. Its regeneration mode activated, and the monster's body merged, restoring itself completely. Fang Yi immediately realized the snake's dark aura was even denser than that of the night candle. When he used the technique of the bloody fire sword, the young man took control of the snake's power and suppressed it. Concentrating lightning in his hand, he channeled it through the sword straight into the monster's body. The night candle is a dark anomaly, cunning and bloodthirsty, but not particularly strong. It only deals significant damage after evolving. The snake is another matter. Even its scales are dangerous. The protagonist suffered a burn on his shoulder where its shard struck. Just as Fang Yi had suspected, the creature had already mutated. The snake's intellect was more developed. Every attack was deadly, possessed a paralyzing effect, and destroyed its prey silently, leaving no trace. The young man felt a sharp pain from the continuous flow of the sun's energy through his body. The Golden Sun Breath technique neutralizes the poison. The sun element heals while the lightning element purifies. These two elements react with pain to the poison's intrusion, warning of the approaching danger. For other people, this would be incurable. The snake was able to grow to enormous size, reaching the 3-star level. It hunts by setting ambushes. The snake and the night candle act as allies. Moreover, it is the perfect trap for elite pioneers. It has likely already devoured quite a few people, perhaps pioneers who did not cooperate with the association. Thanks to Fang Yi's precise actions, the snake was destroyed. The flame's energy was pure, but the lightning strike proved more effective. The young man realized that his combat abilities were worthy of attention among the pioneers. Fang Yi looked through the smoke and noticed someone else. A cough rang out. He stepped closer and saw the very same girl from the association. "What are you doing here?" he said. "There's no need to pretend," the young man added. Fang Yi stepped even closer and said that her acting needed work. He realized immediately she was alive. Su Gunying was afraid to open her eyes. She thought enemies were lurking on the narrow pass. Could it be him again? The girl thought. She claimed she'd woken up from the smell and hadn't been pretending at all. Fang Yi acknowledged her strength. Her teammates had exhausted all their energy, but she still had enough strength to defend herself. The girl thanked him for the compliment. Su Gunying thought she had indeed saved a little spiritual energy for defense, and this guy had noticed it. The girl couldn't figure out how he'd managed to defeat Night Candle and the snake. The young man said she didn't need to close her eyes anymore. She just had to promise to be honest and not reveal his identity. Su Gunying thought he seemed much friendlier now. Fang Yi said it was already late. She and her companions were out of danger, so he would leave first. The girl asked him to stay. He replied that too many witnesses always complicate matters. "You'll figure this out on your own," Fang Yi added. He thought it was good that she hadn't seen him trying to absorb the dark energy. The young man felt discomfort and a bone-chilling cold. Fang Yi saw Su Gunying run for help. The dark spiritual energy dissipated, and his body instinctively rejected it. The system remained silent. Su Gunying regretted that she hadn't had time to get a good look at his face, so he still didn't trust the association. The girl patted the squad leader on the cheek and told him to pull himself together. The worst was already over. The man opened his eyes, jumped up abruptly, and shouted that they were under ambush. When everyone came to, they still didn't understand what had happened. Where had this incredible solar energy come from? Could it be that the pioneer had come to their aid? Su Qinying said that this pioneer was the target of her mission. Her original task was to track down a pioneer with a very high level of solar energy. The girl added that she hadn't succeeded yet. The hero's identity remains a mystery. In fact, he was the one who tracked her down. He knew exactly what she was doing, and this time, he was the one who saved them. The hunters were astonished. Could this guy really have defeated Night Candle and the snake all by himself? The squad commander looked around and asked, "Where is Night Candle? We need to gather all the remains and hand them over to the association." The officer stepped on the remains and immediately felt a furious energy. Quickly pulling his foot back, he asked, "Are you sure that guy possessed the element of the sun?" The remnants of electrical energy were too obvious. Su Qinying asked, "Is this Night Candle's body?" The lightning element was pure, and judging by the level, perhaps two pioneers had appeared here. Each had destroyed a creature and then left together. Su Qinying thought that was impossible. There was only one person here. However, no one would believe that a single person possessed two high-level elements. One of them alone would make someone a genius. A pioneer with two high-level elements is nearly impossible. One of them is the Flaming Wanderer. The other is the Thunderstorm Tyrant. Who on earth is this person? He's a true monster. Su Qinying thought it was a good thing she'd left the team members outside. If they'd stayed inside too long, they would have reported it to the association. The association's scouts arrived on the scene. Their goal was to collect the bodies of the dead. The members of the Firefly squad were glad their boss had survived. The main task was to scan residual spiritual energy, analyze traces, and reconstruct the battle. The association's reconnaissance squad arrived at the scene. The scout reported that the analysis of the traces showed, regardless of the methods of destruction, everything pointed to a single person. The scout confirmed it was the same person. An error was practically impossible. The squad commander noted that this is indeed a high-level pioneer. Any one of these anomalies could have wiped out his squad. The assistant added that this powerful individual had dealt with it in a single strike. They are all ghost rank axes, but the difference is colossal. Su Qinying contacted the colonel and said that her surveillance target had appeared. The data has been updated. She is ready to report to headquarters. The Tyrant and the university's North Gate, both were her assignments. The association president ordered the captain to suspend the mission. The man said that this person had saved her, eliminated the anomalies, and ensured her safety. Therefore, he was not an enemy of the association. The president noted that he and the colonel had differing views. For Qinying's safety and to make a good impression on Tyrant, contact with him must be avoided. The girl understood this, but she had a theory about what happened while Tyrant was training on the mountain. Su Gunying noticed an incredibly strong aura in the area where he was active. She suspected a spiritual weapon, but considered it unlikely. The president said it was unlikely that he possessed a spiritual weapon. No matter how gifted he was, there was no chance he could wield such a weapon without external assistance or resources. The scouts found no traces of the third spiritual energy typically associated with spiritual weapons. Qinying said when they met that the aura of the spiritual weapon was similar to the sun element. The president surmised that the weapon's element came directly from his own sun energy. At that time, he had reached the rank of soul creation. In that case, everything that had happened was theoretically possible to accomplish alone. The girl thought that even on a global scale, spiritual practices at this level were extremely rare. She knew only two people who had reached this level. If this person truly possesses the three elements, it will completely change the balance of power. It will turn the entire world of the pioneers upside down. The president said that according to research, different elements are incompatible within the human body. They can barely coexist. So far, no pioneer has been confirmed as possessing three different spiritual elements. Let's hope that such a powerful pioneer never becomes an enemy of humanity. With less than a year left until the official revival of spiritual energy, anomalies and various phenomena are already beginning to flare up everywhere and are becoming extremely active. Many pioneers have begun cultivating their powers on their own. As soon as an interaction between the body and the spiritual world occurs, pioneers become more sensitive to changes in the heavens and on Earth, as those people recently observed by the underground river. Even without official recognition from the Xia nation, the pioneers have reached the one-star level. But now that the nation is reaching out to independent pioneers, this indicates that they are all in a relatively peaceful phase of mutual assistance. Anomalies are still within manageable limits, and there are no serious conflicts among the pioneers yet. However, even though the government has established an association of spiritual energy practitioners, it has not yet gone public. People are increasingly discussing local instability and unexplained phenomena. It is clear that the government is trying to protect humanity and is preparing the population in advance by issuing warnings. However, that is precisely the problem. The young man senses that the government is uncertain at the dawn of a new era. As soon as the information becomes public, the entire order will collapse. Internal unrest will cause chaos. Even recognized pioneers will be unable to stabilize the social upheaval. Internal and external threats only accelerate this collapse. Therefore, the government's soft approach is not a mistake. Human hearts are more terrifying than ghosts and gods. However, our hero is troubled by the development of anomalies that exceed his expectations. What the young man encountered today was a typical mutated product of dark energy contamination. Upon touching the black mist, he realized that the mist belonged to a sub-branch of dark energy known as shadow energy, the pioneer's sole enemy. These anomalies are far more intelligent than typical exotic beasts. The bodies of the pioneers serve as an excellent source of nourishment for them. They can cooperate with one another to lure their prey. Although they have not yet reached the level of the true dark anomalies the young man has faced before, there are some that could destroy a country on their own. Even the sub-element was so sinister and repulsive that threats from full-fledged dark energy would be extremely dangerous. The young man thought he could absorb it as soon as the conditions were met. This could be the key to turning the situation around. Fan Yi thought that now he possessed the Golden Sun Breath technique, the Great Divine Thunder technique, and the Bloody Fire Sword technique, the Sun element and the Inner Flame. He also had corresponding techniques that suited him perfectly, but that still wasn't enough. Suddenly the phone rang. The young man wondered what his aunt wanted from him. The woman asked how Fan Yi was doing. She said that the young man's cousin was coming to visit and would be studying nearby. She was worried that the girl would be alone in the hotel. Could she stay with Fan Yi for a few days? The only thing the young man remembered about his cousin was that she was a straight-A student obsessed with her studies. Our hero didn't even remember what his cousin looked like. Fan Yi replied to his aunt that, of course, he didn't mind. The girl was welcome to come. He had a spare room. His aunt said she would let her cousin know herself, and she would come on her own. His aunt promised that his cousin would bring some special snacks. The young man promised he wouldn't hold back. His aunt said his cousin would arrive tomorrow afternoon and apologize for the inconvenience. The woman told the young man to take care of himself and visit her more often. The monitor screen displayed the latest rumors. The city that had become famous online had been renamed the City of Doom. 3 more people had gone missing. Are people still taking the Beast Challenge? The girl thought it must be Manhwa City. Her mother peeked into the room and asked if her daughter had finished packing. The girl replied that she had finished packing a long time ago. However, she didn't want to bother her cousin. A hotel would be fine for her too. The woman said it would be safer that way than if she stayed alone. She trusted this young man. The daughter saw her mother out of the room. The woman said she shouldn't cause any trouble by staying there. She should help her cousin with the housework whenever she could. The girl said she understood everything. The girl thought that whoever her cousin might be, he was unlikely to be any more complicated than the anomalies. The next day, the young lady arrived at a tall building with a suitcase in her hand. The navigator announced that she had arrived at her destination. The girl looked up and decided she was indeed in the right place. A young man appeared on the porch. The girl assumed he was her cousin. The young man realized that Lin Yi was standing before him. He didn't remember her appearance at all. The young people drank a cup of tea. The young man said that if his cousin needed anything, she could ask him. The girl thanked him. Fan Yi handed Lin Yi a spare set of keys and told her that her room was across the hall. The girl said she would be relying on her cousin for the next few days. Lin Yi thought her cousin was kind and easy to get along with. He shouldn't meddle in her affairs. Fan Yi was surprised. Could his instincts be failing him? Or was she just bad at hiding her secrets? As she sat on the couch, he sensed a faint aura. Could she be a pioneer too? In that case, her coming here to summer camp might just be a pretext. What was the real reason? Lin Yi decided not to let her guard down and to continue training right away. If her cousin found out, it would be hard to explain. 3 days had passed. The young man hadn't expected that living with his cousin would cause so many problems with his training. His meditation could be interrupted at literally any moment. Even training in the golden sun breath technique could be disrupted. Just how bright does the golden sun breath look? Lin Yi said dinner was ready. Today they had braised beef with tomatoes and other dishes. During dinner, the young man said that Lin Yi had been very generous today and offered to wash the dishes after dinner. The girl said she would do it herself since she was staying there for free. It was the least she could do. Fang Yi decided he wouldn't stop his cousin, hoping to ease her wariness toward him. Her impeccable manners and housework were carried out flawlessly, as if she were possessed. The young man was eager to discover his cousin's true nature. Suddenly, a message popped up on his smartphone. The young people exchanged glances. Fan Yi assumed it was a message from a friend. The young man said he wouldn't interfere. Lin Yi could chat in peace. He would go to his room for now. The girl was told that the anomaly would appear again tomorrow. Lin Yi asked, "What time?" She said she would definitely be there at 3 o'clock, at the entrance to Yanghua. Fan Yi thought to himself that it was a well-known tourist town, just an hour's drive away. The protagonist was surprised that his cousin was truly a pioneer. However, at her current level, she wouldn't be able to replace him. While still in high school, the girl had reached the 2nd star level of the Ghost Axe. Could it be that her great talent was the reason she was so strange? Fan Yi realized that the trip to summer camp was a lie. The real goal was the anomaly. It seemed that his cousin had somehow found out about the anomaly and made up an excuse to come. However, every anomaly was his chance to acquire a new technique to increase his own strength. Our hero decided that no matter what happened, the new technique to increase his power would belong to him. After meditating, Lin Yi felt as if someone were watching her. Yanghua is a small resort town tucked away somewhere in the mountains. A friend asked Lin Yi if the girl really lived with her cousin and if he was handsome. Lin Yi said he was a good person, but completely ordinary looking. He didn't look like an internet celebrity. Her friend was a little disappointed. This girl was involved in scams on online romance sites. The woman pointed out that even Lin Yi described herself as an ordinary person among people. She was an 81-year-old beautiful widow. The young man said that since everyone was gathered, they could move on to the main topic. Lin Yi asked, "Is she really not coming again?" The young man said she probably wouldn't come, but there were already 6 of them anyway. The widow said she was always so mysterious. They were already used to it. Fang Yi watched this group of people from a table at a nearby cafe. He assumed his cousin's team was also keeping a low profile. The weakest among them was a member at the 2nd star level of the Ghost Axe. The guy who had just spoken was at the 3rd star level. Judging by what they said, there was someone strong on their team. However, that person was often absent. In the mountains of this tourist town, a vine suddenly appeared, hanging down from the sky, just like the beanstalk from the fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. Plants appear completely spontaneously at various times in the town's surroundings. This contradicts all the pioneers' previous knowledge. It simply goes beyond their understanding. Even if it is an anomaly, it is not related to the weather, the collapse of the earth, or changes in the surface. It is something strange that appears out of nowhere, creeps along quietly and causes no harm. The vine simply moves silently. The widow said it was really true. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed anyone. One of the girls asked if maybe they shouldn't get any closer. Lin Yi asked what was wrong. The girl explained that just one glance gave her goosebumps. It felt like something was off. The girl asked if no one had read the rumors on the internal forum. She had acquaintances on another team. The last time a plant like this appeared, they tried to touch it. They were all high-level pioneers. After that, they all disappeared. The girl said she had a feeling that the same thing might happen now. It could be a death without a grave. Death without a grave is something so terrible, it's impossible to even imagine. The girl said that as soon as she saw this creature, she felt a primal terror. Her intuition tells her that this is an anomaly of an extremely high level. Something powerful, unknown, and completely new. The frightened hiker said she didn't want to die here and wanted to retreat. Lin Yi admitted that they had all felt it. The girl didn't know how to describe it, but she had the feeling that her body was drowning in a river of time where everything had faded and all life had vanished. That was why they felt such anxiety and unease. It was as if this creature wanted to devour their life force. Lin Yi took her frightened friend by the hand and said that this was the path of pioneers. Fang Yi, watching the group, sensed a grim aura of doom. The young man had seen many different anomalies, but aside from the dark energy, these vines were the most alarming of all. Fang Yi thought that training here was a courage worthy of respect. Although it is a plant that symbolizes life, it exudes a sense of subjugation and submission. These vines do not seem alive. They are more like dead plants that are merely pretending to be alive, but have lost their spiritual energy. Lin Yi climbed up to a high point and said they had no time to think. Since it was dangerous, they had to train right here. Lin Yi told everyone to stay within sight and not wander too far. Lin Yi climbed onto a tree branch, assumed the lotus position, and began to meditate. Fang Yi thought this was pretty good. The squad was alert, sensing the energy and training at an optimal distance. Not too close, but not too far either. No wonder his cousin excelled in her studies. She had precisely calculated the spot to gain the maximum benefit. Fang Yi was surprised. Had Lin Yi really reached the rank of third-star spiritual axe so quickly? His cousin's talent was truly outstanding. Lin Yi's companions were amazed by this girl's abilities. However, the young people noticed that the vines were beginning to move toward them. Could they really have been detected even from such a distance? The vines attacked the group, and it was already too late to escape. The people found themselves trapped by these plants. Lin Yi remained in a state of meditation. However, it was her breakthrough that had caused too much of a commotion. The vines must not be allowed to wrap around her body. The widow grabbed her companion and said they couldn't leave now. Lin Yi would be in danger. The girl said that Lin Yi had chosen this thorny path herself. She was acting irresponsibly and was willing to lose her life just for the sake of power. The young man told the widow to calm down. If they didn't leave now, they would be buried here. They shouldn't act impulsively. They were all strangers who had met here by chance. The widow slapped the young man across the cheek and said she would not abandon Lin Yi. Fang Yi, watching this scene, expressed hope that his cousin would realize her situation. She was still a student, and the power of these vines was great. The young man didn't know if he had enough strength to save the girl. There was almost no time left. Fang Yi grabbed his sword, for he had promised his aunt that he would take care of his cousin. Promises must not be broken. The vine had ensnared many, including the widow, who was entangled in the plant's tendrils. Wielding his sword, Fang Yi closed in to a distance close enough to attack the plant. Our hero unleashed a fire attack, and the vine retreated. The members of Lin Yi's squad looked at this guy. Could he be a pioneer too? That's pure sun element. Only an element of such purity can suppress the vine of destruction. This guy is quite talented, having reached the rank of a third-star spirit axe in such a short time. The young man thought that, setting aside this talent, Lin Yi's talent didn't greatly surpass his own abilities. If there is someone among the pioneers with such power, who are they compared to this guy? Merely wandering pale stars, taming the bright moon. This guy crushed all the pioneers. What kind of being is he anyway? A concentrated wood element was detected. An automatic verification procedure was initiated. It was a very powerful wood technique. As long as there is life around, it acts as an eternal charging station that will never run dry. The element devastation has been extracted. It can instantly release an aura of devastation, corroding all surrounding life force. It was no surprise that this vine grew in such a place. Fang Yi thought that such power, the element of desolation, was too formidable. It forcibly extracts life force. The girl thanked him for saving them. After all, if it weren't for this guy, they would all surely have perished. The widow asked how she could repay the young man. Fang Yi said that thanks were unnecessary and added that they would meet again. In reality, our hero had come here only because of rumors, but he had gained both the element of eternal life and the elements of devastation. So he had benefited from what had happened. As for the conflict between these people, now he needs to pay more attention to his cousin's actions. Our hero left the location. The young man thought that people most easily reveal their true nature in crisis situations, and that this team was fragile and unreliable when it came to serious incidents. The girl was surprised. Why did this guy leave so quickly? What are they going to do now? The young man asked, do you really regret that he didn't come sooner? The danger had passed, and Lin Yi had almost finished strengthening the third rank. The best thing to do right now was simply to stay here. Suddenly, Lin Yi woke up. Everyone was relieved. The young man said that if she had enough sense, Lin Yi wouldn't cut ties with them. Right now, it was better to think about that person. Lin Yi looked around and asked what had happened here. The girl sensed a powerful trace of energy nearby. Even from this distance, she could feel how scorching and overwhelming that energy was. The young man said he could explain what had actually happened. As she listened to the story, Lin Yi wondered, could such a powerful person really exist? The storyteller said that this guy was a true monster. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't defeat the vine. However, this man was able to destroy the plant with a single blow. Its eyes rose higher into the sky, no longer willing to approach people. Lin Yi went up to the apartment, still thinking about the training. The fear instilled in the plant had made it obedient. There was no trace left of its former frenzied madness. The girl entered the apartment. Fan Yi greeted her and said that Lin Yi looked a little pale. Her cousin replied that her studies were wearing her out a bit. Fan Yi noticed that the girl was wearing herself out and needed a rest. Her cousin was left alone in the room and thought that the breakthrough was taking too much out of her. Every time she used her spiritual power to control the divine acts, she had to concentrate intensely. It was even worse than not sleeping for a whole month. Lin Yi thought that fortunately she was no longer an ordinary person. A few sleepless nights wouldn't do her any harm. Spiritual practice was, after all, part of the life of a pioneer. The young man thought that heaven and earth were already beginning to change. He could no longer live like an ordinary person. Fan Yi thought that now Lin Yi should be less wary of him. Even if she went out, she wouldn't suspect that he was following her. The protagonist decided that while he still had the chance, he should figure out how to use the element of devastation. The young man continued riding his bike along the road that ran through the forest. The element of desolation was closest to the plant type, although in the end it was quite frightening, since its essence lay in corrosion. If he were to incorporate the element, things might end badly. Besides, this element could conflict with the thunder element, which the young man already possesses. So the best option would be something like that strange vine. It had dangled down from the sky because it sensed the rich aura of the Renaissance. It chose to evolve on its own, giving birth to the element of desolation. Now our hero knew where he needed to go. The young man found himself in the city park and continued on foot. Fan Yi thought that now he needed to choose a plant that resonated most strongly with his aura, a plant that could also interact with the element. After spending some time in the park, Fan Yi realized how the plant reacted to his aura. It reacted quite actively, but still not enough. Something more was needed. Fan Yi noticed a lone flower glowing in the darkness. The young man thought that this plant was exactly what he needed. Fan Yi reached out a finger toward the flower. The plant wrapped its petals around his finger, as if greeting him. This wildflower looked like an ordinary plant, but when interacting with the aura, it behaved like a greedy puppy, practically rubbing against his finger. Of all the plants in the forest, this one reacted most strongly to the aura and was ideal for imbuing with the element of devastation. The young man imbued the plant with the element of devastation. There was a flash, and a powerful green beam shot up into the sky. The flower changed shape, became more vibrant, and grew in size. The root system spread out and penetrated deeper into the soil. It was a powerful force of devastation, as if the demon itself had touched it. In a matter of seconds, the flower had consumed nearly the entire forest park. It was too powerful. The frenzied consumption continued. Fan Yi pulled the plant out of the ground. At this rate, he might attract the attention of the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association. Especially since this is the city center, the association is bound to notice this area. Because of the spiritual energy revival, all these plants are in danger. When the young man entered the park, a large number of surveillance cameras caught his eye. The place itself was completely deserted. The flower had not yet stopped absorbing energy and continued to survive without roots. Although compared to the frenzied pace earlier, the process had now slowed significantly. It was astonishing. Even without soil, the spiritual energy hadn't weakened in the slightest. Just a short while ago, it had been an ordinary wild plant. A warning came in that the abnormal reading had exceeded the limit. Fan Yi thought he had attracted the attention of the video surveillance system and that it was time to leave. The department researching plants related to the revival of spiritual energy received this warning. The limit has been exceeded and the abnormal readings are fluctuating wildly. They must immediately go to the park and cordon it off, not allowing outsiders in. The researchers didn't understand what they were dealing with. At the university's north gate, the fluctuations were only between 8 and 10. When the spiritual energy anomaly exceeds 10, the army takes control of the situation. But the concentration in this park had never reached such a level before. It seemed strange. Humidity, soil temperature, and other indicators remained normal. But it felt as though all life had been sucked out of the plants in a matter of seconds. What element could cause this? We must find the epicenter of this disaster. The senior group was told not to get too close. Don't touch anything. It's the element of devastation. Surely none of those present had heard of the vine hanging from the sky. The vine is extremely dangerous and leaves behind the bones of countless pioneers, all because it possesses the element of desolation. It sucks the life force out of everything around it, appropriating it for itself. The assistant said that if the teacher hadn't stopped him, he would have stepped inside and certainly perished. Plants that have awakened with the element of devastation create such a zone. Everything that enters it falls under the influence of these plants. Once there was a report of another plant of desolation in the forbidden zone of an ancient tree, a giant rotting tree that was contaminating the entire forest. Anything that came near it perished. The professor said that with the changes in the sky and the earth, plant mutations cannot be ignored. At present, the element of desolation is the strongest of all known plant elements, and now this newcomer has appeared. The colonel arrived at the scene and reported that he had already been briefed on the matter. The colonel ordered all researchers to gear up and proceed to the contaminated zone. After a thorough investigation, the source of the devastation was never found, but they said that only the vine could move. The colonel suggested examining the soil. That is how the epicenter was discovered. The colonel and the captain looked in the indicated direction and were surprised to find that someone had already taken the source. The professor said that was impossible. If someone had indeed managed to take the source from the restricted zone, their identity was highly suspicious. Jinyan said she understood what the colonel was thinking. There were no traces of the spiritual power of that top-tier pioneer here. The colonel noted that the movements on the surveillance footage matched both mutation incidents. The girl looked at the file on a young man named Lin Yi. The colonel said that all the information would be sent to the captain. This was most likely the same pioneer she had encountered earlier. How they would proceed from here depended on the association. 2 hours passed. Lin Yi turned the flower into a houseplant and planted it in a pot. It was the first time the young man had grown a flower. He considered it an obedient little white flower. Now, possessing the element of devastation, he could practice on his own. This flower had become his reliable assistant. Thanks to the special abilities of the element of devastation, the flower would be useful in battle. The element of surprise was guaranteed. The plant looked completely unremarkable. Even his cousin wouldn't suspect a thing. In battle, an ordinary appearance was the best disguise. Lin Yi said that strength is only part of the equation. It's more important to have trump cards. The phone rang. On the line was Wang, a childhood friend who had joined the army 3 years ago. Wang Liang had been his desk mate in elementary and middle school. They could have gone to high school together, but Wang Liang suddenly left, saying he was going to serve in the army. Lin Yi was delighted that Wang Liang had finally returned. The young men decided to meet at their old hangout and catch up. Wang Liang said he had a huge secret he wanted to share. The young officer ended the call, placed the phone on the table, and reported that he had carried out the commander's instructions. But if this guy isn't the one they're looking for, can they guarantee his safety? The commander told the officer to simply carry out the mission and not get involved in anything unnecessary. If this isn't the right person, nothing will happen to him. The young people met and shared stories about the past 3 years. Lin Yi said things were going well for him. He had enrolled in college. Our hero thought that in his past life, he had never managed to see Wang Liang again. In that world full of chaos, it was hard to get news. As a soldier, he had probably died in some nameless battle. Lin Yi wondered if he could change his old friend's fate this time. Wang Liang asked if he had noticed anything strange lately. Zombies, monsters, or anything like that. Lin Yi thought that made sense. News of the revival of spiritual energy should have reached the army long ago. However, Wang Liang's question was strange. Was he trying to pry something out of him? Wang Ling said that if he hadn't noticed anything, that was fine. In fact, he had come to warn him. In the coming months, everything they currently valued would become worthless junk. Everything would change. Ordinary soldiers are ordered to keep silent, forced to sign an agreement forbidding even a hint of the revival of spiritual energy. Lin Yi thought that the military had already flagged him as a suspect and was monitoring his activity. His childhood friend had been sent to check on him. Wang Liang said there was no need to worry. As long as he didn't say a word, everything would be fine. Lin Yi pretended not to understand and refused to cooperate. Wang Ling warned him anyway, even though he risked disciplinary action. Suddenly, the phone rang. Wang Ling answered and received an immediate order to return to base and report everything upon arrival. Wang Ling apologized and said he had to leave immediately. It was an urgent mission. Lin Yi asked if it had anything to do with the revival of spiritual energy. The protagonist wanted to go with his friend. Lin Yi told Wang Liang to take him along. After all, wasn't this meeting an order from higher-ups? He added that even if he didn't know what the order was, he was sure Wang Liang wouldn't harm him. Besides, the hero was very curious to find out what the army was up to. It must be related to the changes in the world. But if the Spiritual Energy Association was already dealing with anomalies, what was the army responsible for? The young people arrived at the military restricted zone in the Lin Yi district. Fan Yi sensed dense spiritual energy here. Its concentration was even higher than in the contaminated zones. The guard on duty reported that Wang Liang had returned. Our hero entered the room following his friend. Something incredible was happening at the base. The military was trying to fight a huge monster. Fan Yi was surprised. What was going on here? It was an unusual fusion of the elements of darkness and flame. It made this beast particularly ferocious and savage. Officer Ji Lang, holder of the 3rd star of the Phantom Axe, reported that several soldiers had already sustained serious injuries. Wang Lang reported to the commander that he had arrived after completing his mission. Ji Lang was surprised. Had the officer really brought an outsider into the restricted zone without permission? Ji Lang added that she would deal with this later. The situation had become critical. Wang Liang must immediately take his place in formation. Ji Lang thought that this Fan Yi didn't look like anything special. His spiritual energy was only slightly active. Maybe it wasn't him, but now was not the time to figure it out. Ji Lang told the civilian that this was a restricted zone. If he entered, he would be responsible for his own life. Everything he saw here was classified. Officer Ji Lang slung a large caliber firearm over her shoulder and opened automatic fire to kill. The monster was wounded and roared loudly. Its mutation had progressed again. The commander shouted for Lin Yi to be careful. Now was not the time to play the hero. Ji Lang added that they must not let their guard down and must keep their distance. They had to finish off this creature before it fully evolved. Fan Yi thought he saw a well-trained squad, comrades who trusted one another, the highest discipline and coordination. Together, they could unleash a power far surpassing their individual capabilities. Fan Yi shouted for everyone to scatter. They couldn't handle this creature. Officer Ji Lang shouted that the alert level must be raised. The mutation level in the restricted zone had increased. No one was to retreat. Reports came in that the Hellhound had fully fused with the element of darkness and completed its mutation. Wang Liang was closest to the monster, so he took the most damage. Ji Lang said that the Level C Hellhound in the restricted zone had fully mutated. It had now been reclassified as Level B. The battle plan needed to be updated. Fan Yi ran over to his bleeding friend and asked if he was okay. Wang Liang said he was fine. He had simply tried to channel spiritual energy into the restraining collar, but received a backlash. Officer Ji Lang said they had to act, no matter what tactics or methods they used, even if it meant giving their lives. They must not retreat. Under no circumstances would they allow a Level B mutant to leave the restricted zone. Fan Yi paid no heed to these words and rushed toward the mutant. Ji Lang was taken aback. What was the young man doing? Everyone present was stunned when they saw that this guy had activated a lightning bolt capable of tearing the monster to shreds. Wang Liang asked the commander, could his friend really be the one they were looking for? Ji Lang said that now everyone had seen it for themselves. This was indeed the Tyrant. Fan Yi looked at the monster and said it wasn't quite dead yet. That meant they needed to take a different approach. The young man told Officer Ji Lang and his friend Wang to step back and move to the side. A Level B mutation usually requires strategy and coordinated tactics. Ji Lang was surprised. How could this guy handle it alone? Just how strong is he? One had to admit that his mastery of the lightning element was at the highest level. Even now, it was simply unbelievable. What would happen when spiritual energy was fully restored? Ji Lang thought, just how terrifyingly could this guy evolve? He truly lives up to the title of Tyrant. The onlookers didn't understand. Why does the element of lightning seem so much more terrifying than the element of darkness? Lightning is impossible to withstand. Fan Yi approached his friend and said he was already done. Wang Liang said his friend had scared him. Wang Liang placed a friendly hand on his friend's shoulder and said that he had repaid evil with kindness. Wang Liang apologized and said he had suspected that Fan Yi was a pioneer, but he had been obliged to follow orders. Fan Yi replied that he understood. Officer Ji Lang extended her hand and thanked him for his help. Fan Yi shook her hand and said he had simply helped a friend. The woman said she had forgotten to introduce herself and gave her name. She added that she was in charge of security. Ji Lang suggested exchanging contact information as a detailed report needed to be filed. Fan Yi said he agreed. Wang Ling thought that watching Officer Ji Lang salute his childhood friend was a surreal sight. The officer said that Fan Yi's strength surpassed that of many pioneers, specifically recruited by the army. Therefore, she sincerely wanted to invite the young man to join the ranks of the Xia Country Armed Forces. However, an invitation from a mere security guard of the restricted zone might not be honorable enough. What shocked the woman most was that this young man had reached the rank of Ghost Axe with only a 3rd star, yet had already surpassed the mastery level of that rank. Fan Yi was surprised. Did Officer Ji Lang really mean to say that this wasn't honorable enough to invite him? Ji Lang said she didn't deny it and saw nothing shameful in it. They were acting on orders from above and only wanted to talk to Fan Yi, not drag him into the incident. The woman added that the leadership would come personally to invite the young man. Fan Yi said that he has great respect for all of them. Each of them has the courage to sacrifice themselves to protect others. He has never before seen soldiers fighting with his own eyes. Fan Yi added that if any problems arose in the future, they should feel free to contact him. He would come to their aid, provided that no one interfered with or restricted his spiritual practices. Fan Yi said goodbye and mentioned that it was time for him to leave. Ji Lang said she still needed to deal with the body of the mutated dog. Now our hero understood the role of the army. They are stationed in regions rich in spiritual energy but dangerous, in order to train and maintain superior combat power. Also to establish a protective barrier between anomalies and civilians. Ji Lang said that this guy couldn't be described as ordinary. What happened today was just the tip of the iceberg, but even that is enough to leave them far behind. The fact that he became such a powerful pioneer so quickly means he has incredible perception. Wang Liang asked, "In that case, should we offer him more privileges?" Ji Lang said she knew what needed to be done and added that Wang Liang should go with her to help clean up the scene. Fan Yi thought that even though his identity had been revealed this time, he hadn't shown anything other than the lightning element. Judging by their reaction, it might even have been for the best. The protagonist learned that the lightning element was incredibly rare, perhaps even unique. It suppressed the darkness element, and the army highly valued that. The young man thought that, in order to win him over to their side, they would not only refrain from threatening or suppressing him, but on the contrary, they would support him and grant him a voice. Besides, he now understood the difference between the army and the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners. The army consists of night watchmen, blades in the darkness, the shield of the nation. Meanwhile, the association fills in the gaps, eliminating residual threats within the cities, doing its utmost to ensure a stable life for civilians. On the one hand, the government uses the forbidden zones to protect civilians. On the other, it signals the revival of spiritual energy, employing a two-pronged approach. This buys ordinary people quite a bit of time so they won't perish or be driven out by anomalies. Even after absorbing the element of desolation, the young man did not feel that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. However, as soon as he briefly entered the forbidden zone, his internal spiritual energy became overflowing. This was a clear sign of a breakthrough. On her way home, Lin Yi wondered if her cousin had returned. She could let him try her improved cooking. The girl looked up and saw a powerful pillar of light stretching up to the heavens. Lin Yi was surprised. What was that? Could it be powerful fluctuations caused by someone who had reached the Ghost Axe rank? However, this energy was too intimidating. Could it be that some pioneer was about to break through to the soul creation rank? Lin Yi thought it couldn't be the Ghost Axe. The energy was too terrifying. Could it be soul creation? Such a powerful pioneer had been right under her nose all this time. Information appeared on the monitoring center indicating that the anomaly level had reached 99. A spiritual fluctuation field had been detected 5 kilometers southeast of the city. The colonel was surprised. What was going on here? They needed to move out to the specified area immediately. Qin Yin couldn't understand how such a powerful anomaly had gone unnoticed all this time. This level was enough to destroy an entire city. Could a pioneer of the soul creation rank have appeared? Or was a catastrophic disaster awaiting this region? The colonel said they needed to request immediate support from headquarters. In addition to weapons of mass destruction, all the latest equipment and resources should be deployed. The duty officer informed Colonel Han that the alert had been canceled. The anomaly had been ruled out. It was a pioneer's breakthrough. Fan Yi was surprised. Had he really achieved the breakthrough that easily? Now he was at the soul creation rank, the 1st star. The young man felt much lighter physically, but otherwise nothing had changed. Our hero checked what people were writing about it on social media. Fan Yi thought that Wang Liang was right. That was exactly why he had always been cautious with the army and the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners. A display of power that was too flashy didn't always do any good, so he had to hide the sun element in the bloodfire sword technique. Lin Yi walked into the apartment and said she was back. The girl asked if Fan Yi had eaten dinner yet. She had bought a lot of food. For some reason, Lin Yi thought her cousin was decent and upright, with almost no bad habits but terribly lazy. This guy loves lounging around at home and doesn't even want to go to college. He spends all day on his phone, although that doesn't matter anymore. While the pioneers chase after opportunities and hide their powers from ordinary people, Fan Yi idles away carefree. At the same time, someone so powerful has appeared in their neighborhood that they are capable of shaking the heavens, having just achieved soul creation. The other pioneers, having sensed this, will likely soon begin discussing what has happened. The girl thought that when the time came she would protect her cousin. It would be her way of thanking him for letting her stay. Fan Yi continued to follow the news on social media. First high temperatures, now a fire. Yet another event linked to the element of the sun. Judging by the posts, the fire is spreading rapidly and burning fiercely. The trees and flower beds around the field had turned to ash. The area was cordoned off. The video had been cut too short, but it still looked more serious than that incident at the North Gate. What is so special about this element of the sun? Fan Yi thought that if he wanted to see for himself, he would need to contact Officer Ji Lang. The next day arrived, Qingcheng University. Journalists were asking whether there really had been a fire at the university and why they couldn't put it out. Were there any casualties and why wasn't this being reported in the news? Security opened the doors and let Officer Ji Lang and her companion through. Those present wondered who these two were and why they had been allowed in. Ji Lang pointed to the extent of the damage and said that it had burned quite intensely. This is what is known as heavenly fire. No warning signs, just spontaneous combustion that cannot be extinguished. The fire stops only when it has consumed everything it desires. Ji Lang told the young man she was going to the principal's office and asked if he would like to accompany her. Fan Yi replied that she should go alone. He would stay here. The young man approached the restricted area and crossed the barrier. The charred earth had already cooled. Not a trace of the spiritual energy of the heavenly fire remained. The young man decided he had been too optimistic and that gathering the materials would not be possible. Fan Yi looked back and saw his ex-girlfriend, Shu Li, standing behind him. The girl recognized the young man as well and asked what he was doing there. Her friend asked Li, "Is this the ex-boyfriend you were telling me about? The one who could only get into a community college?" Her friend added that the young man was probably here because he still had feelings for Li. However, they had to face the truth. This girl should be let go. Those around them wondered who this guy was. Probably just another poor soul trying to woo Queen Shu Li. Apparently, he wasn't from this school. But why do outsiders get in here so easily? A friend said that Li was the most beautiful girl in the university, so the guy should think twice. Many guys were courting her, and the young man didn't stand a chance. He'd better go home. He didn't belong here. Shu Li wondered. Didn't he say he didn't regret the breakup? Then what is he doing here? He says one thing but feels another. Officer Ji Lang approached the young people and asked Fan Yi if she was his girlfriend. The young man replied that she was just a classmate from high school, not a girlfriend at all. Ji Lang realized that they were merely classmates. Shu Li and her companion felt an awful sense of pressure. Who is this woman? How does she know Fan Yi? The officer said she had already spoken with the director. The situation with the celestial fire turned out to be more serious than they had previously assumed. It's all complicated. The director will take them to the point of the initial outbreak. For now, the young man is acting as a special military consultant under her command. Fan Yi said he agreed. The principal arrived on the premises. An order was issued for all unauthorized personnel to clear the area. The field is closed, entry is prohibited. Everyone present was surprised, since the principal is usually very busy. Even the vice principal rarely sees him. Some said that no one in the entire school had ever seen him smile. Could it be that he came here because of that woman and Fan Yi? Shu Li's friends speculated that the principal had come here to arrest those two troublemakers. The principal stopped in front of the young man and looked him straight in the eye. Then the principal extended his hand, greeted him, and asked if he was the very same advisor, Fan Yi, that Officer Ji Lang had told him about. The principal added that he was sincerely grateful to the young man for his help. Then something incredible happened. The man bowed to the young man and said he was leaving the matter of the field in his hands. Security announced that all non-essential personnel should step aside. There were to be no spectators. Shu Li couldn't believe her eyes. Those around her were saying that this young man must be someone very special. No wonder he was able to get onto campus. The students wondered, who called him a fan of Shu Li or her ex-boyfriend? She would be the one chasing after a guy like that. The whole time, the young man hadn't given the girl a second glance. Chingcheng University North Gate. After the golden sun at the North Gate had faded, Fan Yi thought it was all over. However, a few nights ago, the first field suddenly caught fire, but even the firefighters couldn't put it out. Fortunately, there were no students around at night, and they managed to cordon off the scene in time. But then the second and third fields caught fire. Everyone was baffled. How could this be explained? The principal said he had personally seen tongues of flame falling from the sky and crimson fire hanging in the air for no apparent reason. Fortunately, the fires on the other fields were extinguished, with the exception of one. Fan Yi thought the smell of burning was simply suffocating. The young man asked if the basketball court was the initial point of ignition. The principal admitted that it was also the only place where the fire could not be extinguished. Jiling took out a basic device for detecting anomalous spiritual energy. If the reading exceeded 10, the area would need to be cordoned off and isolated from ordinary people. Human life is incredibly fragile. An anomaly above level 10 is essentially an inevitable catastrophe for them. In this case, the reading was 60. Jilang said that was bad. If things were left as they were, not only the university but the entire city could suffer. 3 3-star Ghost Axe level soldiers and 1 2-star Ghost Axe level soldier must be sent immediately to form a seal formation. They must possess the purest spiritual power. However, the young man didn't wait for help. Officer Ji Lang was surprised. What was Consultant Fan Yi up to? Our hero jumped over the fence and found himself in the burning area. At that moment, another surge occurred. The level indicator read 110. Now it was an S-class anomaly. Why did this guy go in there? And what should they do now? Once inside, Fan Yi thought that last time, the sun element had protected him from the thunder. This heavenly fire element should be just as effective. However, along with protection, it also isolates him from the element of inner flame, which means he cannot activate techniques associated with it. Therefore, he needs to get as close to the source as possible. The young man summoned his golden solar armor and activated his defense. Intense fluctuations of the celestial fire element were detected. Fan Yi thought it was even wilder and more powerful than the element of devastation. However, he must absorb it no matter what. Fan Yi activated his maximum computational capacity. The compilation was complete. The system reported that the user had acquired a heavenly fire element technique, the 9 Dragons Heavenly Fire Sealing Technique. This fire incinerates evil, subdues demons, and seals all impure entities. Fan Yi immediately applied this sealing technique. The heavenly fire of the 9 dragons soared into the sky. The technique was unlocked. The heavenly fire element has been obtained. The 9 dragons heavenly fire sealing technique has been successfully used. Chains appeared behind the protagonist, stretching out in all directions as they attempted to restrain the spreading fire. The director and the officer immediately realized that this was the aura of a seal. The director said that he had once seen a high-ranking military pioneer seal off a restricted zone. That person's technique differed from Fan Yi's, but the aura was eerily similar. As a result, the seal was completed. The young man said he had temporarily sealed the heavenly fire in this location. The seal must not be removed from the field. No repairs may be carried out here, and no one must approach this area. In this way, the heavenly fire will not spread further. The director promised that the field would not be open. Fan Yi said that Chingcheng was indeed wasteful. They had about 8 sports fields. The principal replied that the young man was a big joker. Ji Lang told the principal that she would like to speak with consultant Fan Yi. Ji Lang said that Fan Yi was indeed good at hiding his true self. The young man replied that the heavenly fire was not weak, and it was not easy to deal with. The officer told the young man not to pretend. She was referring to how he had been hiding his talents and power. Though it didn't matter, it was normal for pioneers to keep secrets, especially for someone as powerful as him. At a time like this, the country desperately needs top-tier talents. When spiritual energy is fully revived, the young man will be equivalent to a nuclear explosion. Whether it's the military's restricted zones or the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association, everyone will fight to recruit him. Perhaps even foreign powers will try to lure the young man away with extremely generous offers. Jiling admitted that she had her own motives. If the young man joined the army, it would be a great boon to the restricted zone. More allies mean more paths forward. The officer suggested that the young man start thinking about this now, so he wouldn't be caught off guard when the time came. Fan Yi said he was curious about something. Why had Ji Lang never tried to recruit him into her restricted zone? The officer even acted as if that zone wasn't good enough for him. Ji Lang replied that there was one legendary military district. They were monstrously strong, and so she thought they might interest the young man more. Jilang added that it was a top-tier unit. Although she hadn't seen them in action, rumors were circulating that they had been very busy lately. Fan Yi thought that the most elite military unit in the country of Xia was so active that officers in other districts already knew everything about it. Jilang suggested they stop there. The director invited them to eat at the university cafeteria. Fan Yi thought that they too were facing serious problems. This suggested that some terrifying anomalies had already emerged, possessing power that surpassed the capabilities of the current pioneers. Judging by Jilang's tone, those pioneers were also at the soul creation level, or even stronger. The day of the complete revival of spiritual energy was drawing ever closer, yet our hero still didn't feel quite ready. The young man pondered how best to utilize the element of heavenly fire he had just obtained. Heavenly fire is unpredictable. It is boundless and perfectly suited for fighting those anomalies that multiply endlessly across vast territories. Wasn't this a perfect 100% match for his bloody fire sword technique? The more such additional improvements, the better. Fan Yi found himself in the part of the mountain where there were no anomalies. However, there was a barrier here, warning of danger. Could it be that the military knows he's training and conducting experiments here? Although only the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners should know about this. Fan Yi thought, could it be that they had given him this land for his experiments? In that case, he wouldn't refuse such a kindness. The young man got the impression that some kind of minor creature had managed to sneak in here after all. The aura was similar to the one at the factory, but not as intense. Behind the young man, perched on a tree branch, a beast was watching him surreptitiously. Fan Yi thought that due to the emergence of consciousness, the anomaly was surely now assessing the opponent's strength, deciding whether to attack. I wonder how it will fare. Heavenly fire is also known as the Supreme Flame. It is a powerful element of light that strikes down evil and corruption. The young man had imbued his sword with the heavenly fire element. Heavenly fire burns, but never goes out. The anomaly was struck by heavenly fire. Fan Yi decided that the power of this flame was 3 times greater than that of his previous technique. Moreover, this flame does not harm him. A female streamer happened to be in the same forest. She was in the middle of a live stream. The girl said that she had been incredibly lucky since childhood. Even though this was her first day on air, the content seemed to find her on its own. Suddenly, the girl was attacked by an anomaly. Her phone slipped from her hands. Viewers watched on their screens as a huge creature pounced on the streamer. The beast began to choke the girl, her eyes filled with blood. The monster opened its mouth and growled. Suddenly, a heavenly fire of incredible proportions flared up behind the anomaly. Viewers watched live as the beast, frightened by the heavenly flame, was forced to retreat. The screen was filled with the silhouette of a fiery dragon, thrilling the audience. The number of viewers watching the stream approached 13,000. The girl jumped back in horror. She noticed that the camera had managed to capture everything. But who was this person standing in the fire? It must be a deity who had descended to Earth to save people. At the internet cafe, her friend suggested that Xu Qingli watch the video. A celestial being has descended to Earth to save people. That means powerful pioneers really do exist, and heavenly fire isn't a myth. Qingli objected that she couldn't believe it. It was all special effects and Sora 2 artificial intelligence. However, Qingli still glanced at the screen, and the video piqued her interest. When she saw this man, the girl couldn't believe her eyes. It couldn't be. The silhouette was only vaguely similar. If it were true, he would have turned to ashes long ago. But if it really was him, then seizing the opportunity, he might begin to seek revenge. The beautiful widow asked Lin Yi if this guy looked familiar to her. He looked very much like the pioneer who had saved them from the vine. Lin Yi replied that she thought so too. Besides, she had recently learned that a pioneer who had reached the rank of soul creation lived not far from her home. Could it really be the same person? The girl asked Lao Li if it could be Fan Yi. It felt like he had grown stronger again. Lao Li agreed. The stance when striking with the sword was exactly the same. It seemed they had indeed found a powerful patron back then. During the meeting, it was noted that the crisis in the city was escalating and that there was a growing shortage of pioneers. The director added that the military had already held talks with Fan Yi. Su Qinying expressed confidence that this young man would definitely be of help. Officer Ji Lang said that only a monster could reach the rank of soul creation in such a short time. At the sight of him, the anomalies would flee. How many more high-level elements does he have? With such monstrous potential, attempts to intimidate him look like a farce. Winning him over to our side is now the only way out. Jiling asked if the top brass had also decided to intervene personally. The colonel replied that the higher-ups weren't yet ready to lower themselves to direct contact with Fan Yi. The colonel added that he needed to propose new weapons and equipment designs, as well as information on suitable locations for training. Additionally, they needed to deal with this live stream in the spreading video. Many who understand what is happening in the world have already taken notice of him. Everyone is eager to see what this young man will demonstrate in the future. At the patient's bedside, the girl told the teacher that they had new hope. With the arrival of a person with such power, the chances of the teacher waking up had increased slightly. The next day arrived. Above our hero's house, the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. Fan Yi thought that the day before, everyone had been talking about nothing else. Who would have thought that some streamer would make his way up that mountain just for a live stream? It was all done for the hype. However, now the video is nowhere to be found and the stream itself has been blocked. It's likely the work of the military or the association. Fan Yi looked at his cousin's open door and wondered, had Lin Yi really not come back last night? There were no messages from her either. What was going on? The young man felt uneasy. It was unlikely that the girl could be so irresponsible. Lin Yi's phone wasn't answering. She was out of range. Fan Yi decided he had to find his cousin immediately. Lin Yi and her companion, the beautiful widow, were in a dark forest. The girl asked if they could at least roughly estimate how long they had been trapped there. The widow guessed that about 10 hours had passed, though it was hard to say for sure. Lin Yi admitted that she hadn't been strong enough. Nevertheless, she had to remain vigilant and conserve her remaining strength. She thought that things would have been different if she were as strong as that pioneer. At that moment, a huge monster appeared above them. Lin Yi sensed something was wrong, turned around and saw the monster. She activated her unique abilities and tried to attack. Human body parts were visible in the monster's body. Lin Yi said these were people who had gotten lost here and died. Now they had become part of the anomaly, walking undead. The creature was toying with them, intending to devour them. The widow noticed that attacks on the black mist had no effect, and spiritual energy was being depleted too quickly. On top of that, they didn't even know the true location of the anomaly. It seemed the creature was biding its time until they were completely drained of strength. In this place, it was impossible to defeat it. Suddenly, a glowing red circle appeared in the sky, almost at its zenith. The circle began to disintegrate, forming a multitude of similar symbols. The widow tried to attack the red circles, hoping to destroy them along with the anomaly. Lin Yi warned that they needed to be more careful. The creature was beginning to lose patience. Red symbols appeared everywhere. Lin Yi thought, were they really going to die? The widow's voice faded. It seemed as though darkness had engulfed them both. The girl realized she shouldn't have acted alone. She had been too confident in her belief that the two of them could handle this task together. Lin Yi pondered the fate of the world and the role of those pioneers they did not yet know. Perhaps she was no longer destined to witness the great rebirth of spiritual energy. A bright light flashed in the distance, its rays spreading in all directions. In the next instant, a young man appeared holding the light source in his hand. He apologized and said he had almost been late. Lin Yi was stunned to recognize him as her cousin. What's more, he had saved them. So Fan Yi wasn't an ordinary person at all. Noticing the anomaly, Lin Yi shouted a warning. Fan Yi decided to take the opportunity to test how the heavenly fire affected the darkness. He activated the bloodfire sword technique. The widow asked in panic, "Are we already dead? What is this sea of fire? Have we fallen into hell along with the anomaly?" Lin Yi told her to look closely. They were still alive. Fan Yi approached the frightened women and said he had dealt with the anomaly. He had to act quickly, so he hadn't even had time to eat breakfast. The beautiful widow said she recognized the young man. He was the very same person who had saved them from the vine in Manhwa City. Fan Yi was surprised. Was he really that easy to recognize? Lin Yi was also confused. Could it be that her cousin was implying that he was the very same powerful master of the fire element? The widow was astonished. Could this young man really be the very same Fan Yi whom Lin Yi had described as mediocre? The widow added that this was the very same savior who had severed the vine with a single strike, caused the tough guy to lose his composure, and caught the attention of Sister Ga Lan. Lin Yi realized that her cousin was indeed that powerful pioneer who wielded the fire element, but he had just used the purest lightning to destroy the black mist. The aura of lightning and fire surpassed all her abilities. He was a genius who possessed two supreme elements at once. Could this really be the very same pioneer who had broken through to the soul creation level right in their district? Yi admitted that it was indeed him. However, he reminded them that a dark anomaly should not be treated as ordinary. Then he asked why the two of them had come here alone and where their comrades were. The widow said that one of their colleagues had a serious illness. Before, she had already been going on missions in secret from her family. Now she was locked up at home, so she couldn't come. Another guy was busy with some other, more difficult mission. Lin Yi said that this time she had seriously underestimated the anomaly. She thought she'd break through to the 3rd star level of the Ghost Axe, and there wouldn't be any problems. Yi thought that everyone on this team was acting on their own, and it was unlikely they'd last long. In the last skirmish, the widow had been dissatisfied with the team, but now with another person present, she was defending it. Cousin had always been smart, so she noticed this too. Yi said that Kuzina and the widow had already figured out who he was anyway. He trusted them too. The young man suggested that the girls put together their own team. The only condition was that they couldn't tell anyone about it. The beautiful widow was delighted and promised not to tell anyone. Lin Yi also pondered this proposal. The girl thought that a pioneer as strong as her cousin had probably long since realized that she too was walking the path of the pen. That was why Tane had been protecting her all this time. What a blessing it was to have a loved one who, no matter what, would always help her on this lonely path of spiritual energy practitioners. Lin Yi agreed and thanked her cousin. She promised to fry him 2 more eggs for dinner as a thank you. Lin Yi read a message on her smartphone and said that Galan had sent a new assignment. They needed to go to the zone of extreme darkness and collect the necessary items related to the element of darkness. Fang Yi asked what this zone of extreme darkness was. Lin Yi explained that it was the dark border zone, strictly off limits in the country of Xia. The dark energy there was extremely strong, and pioneers usually gave it a wide berth. Most of the anomalies in this city actually seep in from there. Official agencies haven't been able to investigate it thoroughly. They say serious disasters have occurred there. Yi said that in that case it was worth a try. We need to find out more about the mission. Lin Yi said that Galan is very mysterious. She never says a word more than necessary. If the zone of extreme darkness is strictly guarded by the Xia country, and many people have died there, yet Galan can assign missions related to this zone, then she is either incredibly brave in defying the authorities, or an extremely unusual individual. Or perhaps she herself is a representative of the military or the association's leadership. Galan replied that they needed to collect unhardened flowers. The anomalies there were far more dangerous, so they had to go as a team. The widow was surprised. Had Galan really given such a detailed answer this time? Galan reported that this time they might encounter S-level anomalies. The woman said that now everything depended on whether he would agree. Yi noted that this time the team would have a strong and reliable trailblazer. Galan surely knew this, which was why she had sent this assignment. The young man told his cousin that this mission clearly hinted at him. The mission sounded tempting. Our hero definitely wanted to get into the zone of utter darkness. Galan said that if this guy really is that trailblazer, then he'll come. Galan added that if not, the time had not yet come. Could it be that someone believes the mission to collect untempered flowers is only meant to send strong pioneers to their certain doom in the dangerous zone? The mission is incredibly dangerous, but in reality it serves a completely different purpose. It is necessary to preserve the strength of the Xia kingdom. By gathering the flowers, we can save many pioneers. These pioneers are the future backbone of the nation. They are also the best core combat forces who went ahead and whose fate is now unknown. Galan took the teacher's hand as he lay on the hospital bed and said that they must gather more flowers at all costs. Galan said that the teacher was the only pioneer in the country of Xia to have reached the diamond body rank. They must use the unrefined flowers to heal and awaken him. A diamond body rank fighter, after the awakening of spiritual energy, would possess a value that could not even be compared to nuclear weapons. This was their main leverage in negotiations with other countries, both before and after the awakening of spiritual energy. Therefore, even if they had to sacrifice several squads and an even greater number of pioneers, it would be worth it. The assistant said that the mission was important, but Galan's health mattered too. Galan said loudly that she had returned alive only thanks to her comrades. The woman apologized. She shouldn't have snapped at the girls. It was just that her headache had returned. Galan added that it wasn't time to take her medicine yet. She had simply been thinking of her comrades and brothers in arms. As they were dying, her comrades said that they could only entrust this mission to gather flowers to Galan. This is being done for the sake of the teacher and for the sake of the country of Xia. The commander said that Galan must return alive at all costs. He hoped that their elements would still be useful. The woman said that her comrades in arms had given her their spiritual energy, but they didn't know one thing. Unseasoned flowers that are stained with blood or not picked whole are useless. Almost 2 hours had passed. The widow asked how much further they had to go. She also asked if they could fly at least part of the way. Lin Yi said that spiritual energy had not yet reached the level where people could fly freely. Even the pioneers were not yet capable of this. A zone of utter darkness appeared before the young people. The young man thought that everything here was shrouded in the element of darkness. Even through the numerous barriers, an unpleasant aura could still be felt. The widow said it was a repulsive aura. It was 100 times worse than the anomaly they had encountered the previous night. Lin Yi told the girl to hold on, since they had already come this far anyway. Fenya hadn't expected so many pioneers to gather here. Lin Yi said that it wasn't just about the generous reward. The element of darkness is treacherous, dangerous, and hostile to humans. By now, there had already been more than one attack by anomalies with the dark element in the cities. Fanyi said he had already come face to face with such anomalies twice. The mutant rabbit looked more like some kind of rodent, a giant rat. There was also the night candle and the giant snake at the factory. Their intelligence was more developed than that of the mutated rabbit. They worked together to set traps, luring their victims in. The people from the association were on the brink of destruction. The anomalies are incredibly cunning. They deliberately bypass the army's defenses at the city limits. It's unclear what method they're using, but anomalies are now appearing in the city more frequently. They've reached a level that's difficult to contain. The young man realized they simply had to enter this zone. Captain Su Qinying immediately spotted the young man and noted that he had come with 2 girls. Qinying turned away and began praying to the great Buddha that this guy wouldn't notice her. Fanyi stepped closer and asked, "Is that really Captain Su?" Qinying turned around and said she hadn't expected to see the young man in the zone of utter darkness. "This is simply wonderful." Lin Yi asked who this girl was to her cousin. Su Jinying blushed with embarrassment and said they were just acquaintances. Fanyi replied to his cousin that she was his assistant, Captain Su from the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association. Suddenly, behind our hero, someone said that these kids were recklessly insolent. An armed man added that today's pioneers were too young and had no manners. They saw their elders and couldn't even greet them, completely oblivious to where they were. The beautiful widow said she had a difficult personality. Does this guy even know who he's dealing with? The beautiful widow told the man to watch his step. They'll see who's going to get the better of whom here. The man said the car had just arrived and they should see what it brought. The car doors opened and everyone saw that Galan's sister had arrived. Galan made her way to the gate. A trail of bodyguards followed behind her. People wondered who she could be, bringing such a large entourage with her. She must be here to open the gate. Galan used her unique abilities and channeled the necessary energy to open the gates. Under the influence of the element, the gates swung open. Galan turned to the pioneers and said that they could now enter. The unblemished flowers they gathered must be intact and unstained by human blood. If they do not meet the requirements, the reward will not be given. If there are no questions, you may begin. The pioneers noted that Sister Galan wasn't going in herself, yet she was sending others on such a difficult mission. The young man told Lao Deng to talk less. If they died, they could be recorded as missing in action. Otherwise, it would be a directed mission that they had been sent to certain death. Su Qinying said that the man must be at the 1st star level of soul creation. Besides, there are also a few strong ones among these silent types, but they hide their spiritual energy. The rest of the pioneers are at the 2nd or 3rd star level of the Ghost Axe. According to common knowledge, Level B anomalies are equivalent to the Ghost Axe level among pioneers. Level A is equivalent to the soul creation level and is often found in places of raging or concentrated spiritual energy. S-level anomalies are comparable to the diamond body level, or even higher, and almost always represent a large-scale catastrophe. Anomalies associated with the element of darkness receive additional amplification in the zone of extreme darkness. Lin Yi said she was hearing about this for the first time and asked if Captain Su Qinying was all right. Had the contamination affected her? Yinyan said the girl was overthinking things. They often dealt with such anomalies and weren't afraid of that kind of stench. Besides, she had trained hard to raise her level and had transformed the water element into ice, taking advantage of the lower temperature. Lin Yi said that as soon as she entered the black fog, her spiritual energy's effectiveness plummeted, much more so than during their last mission. Qinying noted that many masters had perished here in the past, so they needed to be even more careful. Lin Yi said that they could no longer make out the other people ahead. They must not stray and should stay close to one another. She would speak less to conserve her strength. They needed to focus their spiritual energy and not let the black mist harm them. Fang Yi thought that since entering, his body hadn't felt such intense discomfort. Apparently, the enhanced versions of the sun and thunder elements had the effect of dispelling the darkness. One of the pioneers fought a monster and said that the anomalies of the zone of extreme darkness weren't all that scary. The man said that unhardened flowers must be gathered in sufficient quantities. We must show our true strength. Lin Yi told her cousin that the feeling of nausea and cold had already disappeared. Now she felt as if she were basking in the winter sun and feeling the warmth. The soul creation rank was truly powerful. Lin Yi added that the fire element is warm. It's no wonder it's a rare supreme element. Only now did she gain a deeper understanding of the essence of the elements. Her wood element absorbs spiritual dew from plants well. Fang Yi said that he had extinguished the fires at the North Gate and at the Qingcheng University sports field. However, these two anomalies were different. The elements of the sun and heavenly fire also have some differences. Qin Ying asked if that meant the young man now possessed 3 rare supreme elements. Fang Yi thought that he also possessed the element of desolation, but it was always useful to keep a trump card up his sleeve. The beautiful widow said she hadn't yet broken through to the 3rd star rank of the ghost axe and had a weak grasp of the elements, but she leaned mostly toward the metal element. She asked if the young man's sun element would warm her up a little too. Fang Yi agreed and added that today he would warm up the beautiful widow as well. The woman received a surge of warming energy. The widow said she felt much warmer now. The girls asked what this guy was doing. Fang Yi asked Captain Su Qinying if her team might want to warm up too. Qinying replied that that would be nice. All the girls immediately received a warming burst of energy and were very pleased. Fang Yi warned everyone that an anomaly had been detected nearby. Su Qinying immediately took up a combat stance and attacked the anomaly with an energy blast. A huge monster resembling a predatory beast appeared above the beautiful widow. It was a level A anomaly. Su Qinying attacked the anomaly again, directing an even more powerful charge at it. The captain noticed that this anomaly turned out to be very troublesome. However, it had now disappeared. Suddenly, the ground beneath the young people's feet became unstable, and undead creatures gathered around them. Fang Yi ordered the undead to retreat and attack them using fire magic. After that, the young man said that it would be safe for a while now. This group of anomalies had been destroyed. The protagonist hadn't expected that the anomalies here had already evolved to the point of mimicking human speech. Su Qinying surmised that the anomalies had devoured many people and learned this ability. Here, even the weakest anomalies had been cultivated by the zone of extreme darkness to level A. Galen was surprised. Could this guy really have destroyed 2 level A illusory beasts with just a single attack? Even she would have exchanged blows with them several times first. Lin Yi believed that anomalies could easily disguise themselves and infiltrate their ranks to attack when they let their guard down. The beautiful widow thought that this was a terrifying and oppressive aura, more frightening than that of cat demons and zombies. Even the slightest touch could burn her. Could this really be level suppression? Lin Yi said that a sound resembling the sound of waves could be heard ahead. One of the pioneers started firing an automatic weapon. He was told they needed to retreat. There was no point in fighting. Cries for help rang out from all sides. This was the very thing that had inflicted heavy losses even on the legendary squad when they encountered it. It was the Dark Tide. Sister Galan said that they could now proceed to the monitors. She had completed all the preparatory work. There was no need to worry. Su Qinying said that the anomalies in the zone of extreme darkness were very active. The beautiful widow dropped to her knees, apologized, and said she couldn't hold it in. She was about to throw up, and that's exactly what happened. Su Qinying said there was nothing to worry about. It was just the smell of decomposing bodies. Everyone here was feeling nauseous. Qinying pointed to a group of people at the same level, and they were also vomiting non-stop. The dark energy was suppressing the pioneers' powers. You could consider it a kind of contamination. The pioneers kept calling for help. They were afraid of the Dark Tide and were retreating rapidly. However, a brave warrior in armor said that he would definitely prevail. That victory would be his, and that he had no intention of retreating. A protective aura surrounded this pioneer. However, the man could not withstand the onslaught of the Dark Tide. He was overwhelmed and said that these anomalies were even higher than level S. The pioneers who hadn't managed to escape were swallowed by the dark abyss, and it was already impossible to save them. Fang Yi thought that this aura was very heavy. Could it be that no one could escape? The protagonist asked Captain Su Qinying what this Dark Tide was. The captain replied that it was a form of the dark element, a corruption that devours everything, even anomalies within itself. Lin Yi was frightened. Could this really be the dark tide? She had only read about it on forums. They say its power is enough to wipe an entire city off the face of the earth. Maybe they should bypass this place. After all, they might still make it in time. Fan Yi urged everyone to remain calm. A spiritual barrier had been created, capable of containing the element of darkness. The young man said that if they needed to join forces, they must do so to sustain the barrier and weather the tide's onslaught. Xinying asked what Fan Yi intended to do. The dark tide was a concentrated element of darkness. They couldn't hold it back on their own. Fan Yi said he wasn't interested in the structure of the dark tide. He would simply destroy it. Before the captain could react, the young man had already left the barrier zone and rushed toward the dark tide. The protagonist found himself at the epicenter. Everything turned out just as he had thought. These were anomalies, not just A-rank creatures that had evolved under the influence of the element of darkness. They had fused with one another, enhancing their own abilities. Their power had risen from level B to level A, and then to level S. Now they were anomalies within the dark tide. They were clearly no less than level SSS. It was no surprise that they had so easily devoured even a pioneer of the soul creation rank, one of the elite. The power gained from breaking through to the soul creation rank, combined with enhanced equipment, is staggering. In the past, a battle like this would have dragged on for a long time. However, now within the dark tide, the protagonist is capable of instantly destroying an A-rank anomaly. The face of the guy swallowed by the monster looked familiar to our hero. Could he still be alive? He was still moving. His spiritual energy hadn't been completely absorbed. The foundation of his spiritual energy might not be that solid, but at least he's strong. There's still hope. The protagonist activated Divine Thunder and used Purification. The pioneer was saved after all, though it wasn't exactly easy. Fan Yi turned his gaze back to the dark tide. The skill of infinite self-regeneration had been activated. The young man surmised that this was a unique trait of anomalies above the S rank. Fan Yi tried a different approach and removed the spiritual barrier. Extremely powerful dark energy has been detected. A special value has been assigned to the element. Extraction is temporarily impossible. Fan Yi realized that he still couldn't extract the element of darkness. It really was special. Fan Yi regretted not bringing the flower with him. The element of devastation would have come in handy right now. The young man wondered what else he could use. However, the answer was right in front of him. Lin Yi asked if Captain Su had ever seen anything like this before. Qinying replied that she had never even heard of anything like it. Could the dark tide really be stopped? Lin Yi was alarmed. What was happening to the barrier? It seemed too strange. Even in the battle against the vines, she hadn't felt such anxiety. Su Gunying said that the spiritual barrier was only flickering slightly. They simply needed to feed it with their spiritual energy together. Besides, if the shield fell, they would all end up buried alive one way or another. Jinying said that it certainly wasn't up to them to come to the young man's aid. She suspected that his true strength had already reached the 3rd star. Lin Yi smiled and said that Captain Su had a good sense of humor. A huge pillar of fire appeared behind the girls. It was the 9 Dragons' heavenly fire sealing technique. The beautiful widow said that this was the work of Lin Yi's cousin. Lin Yi was surprised. Could her cousin really possess such a technique? It seemed simply unbelievable. The sealing was being performed with the element of heavenly fire. Galan couldn't believe it. Had he just sealed the dark tide? Fan Yi activated the subjugation of the 9 Dragons' will. The seal was cast and this event was recorded for the long term. Fan Yi noted that it was temporarily safe. Besides, he had managed to find a survivor. What should they do with this guy now? Su Qinying said her squad would handle the wounded man. Lin Yi asked if her cousin was okay. Qinying said that Fan Yi had sealed such a powerful element of darkness. Why didn't he look satisfied? Feng Yi replied that this was only a temporary seal. There was too much of the dark element inside. While the seal held, they needed to quickly gather the unhardened flowers. Xinying said they would take the wounded man to provide first aid. But what had happened to those who were ahead of them? Fan Yi replied that he found neither bones nor scraps of clothing. Most likely they had all been consumed by the element of darkness, regardless of their strength. Feng Yi said that Cousin, the Widow, and Captain Su would be in the vanguard. The Black Lake was the most dangerous place right now. He would stay behind and provide rear cover. Intense fluctuations of the element of darkness have been detected. The detection was successful. Maximum computing power is being activated. Systematization is underway. The user has acquired the dark element technique, Boundless Dark World. It was a special space. When it is necessary to use the boundless dark world against an enemy, a dark element corrosion effect is applied, which drains the opponent's spiritual power. Energy recovery gradually decreases. If this is combined with current techniques of other elements, an even stronger weakening effect can be applied. Su Qinying asked, "Doesn't anyone else feel that the black mist has become active again?" Feng Yi thought the energy was breaking through again, but there hadn't been any changes just a moment ago. Qinying wondered, could he have absorbed the power of the dark tide, which had been officially classified as an S level with no upper limit? The girl thought this was completely absurd and had no scientific basis. During the period of spiritual energy recovery, all pioneers know that the element of darkness is the most terrifying. It is a force composed of the negative emotions of all living beings, as well as hidden malice. Therefore, the absorption of the element of darkness is officially strictly prohibited. In the past, some had attempted to research methods for purifying and absorbing this element, but each paid a heavy price for it. That is why anomalies of the element of darkness were treated with particular caution. Although their levels range from D to S, even a D-level anomaly can cause a great deal of trouble for a pioneer who has just reached the Ghost Axe rank, not to mention the existing S-level anomaly, the Dark Tide. There was a pioneer who attempted to absorb the element of darkness when it was not yet strictly forbidden. He possessed the rank of a 3rd-star Ghost Axe and absorbed nothing more than a trace of the element of darkness left behind by an anomaly. However, he was poisoned and remains in a psychiatric hospital to this day. Fen Yi concluded that he had been under surveillance for quite some time. Sister Galan emerged from the mist. She said that it was Fan Yi who had sealed the dark tide. Could it be that he had absorbed the element of darkness? The young man confirmed this. Su Qinying noted that the boy had indeed admitted it. Galan pulled a gun from her bosom and pointed it at the protagonist's head. The beautiful widow and Lin Yi were surprised by what Sister Galan was about to do. Su Qinying shielded our hero with her body and said that, if she remembered correctly, Fan Yi was the first candidate the army had tried to recruit. The association had wanted him too, but the army had snatched him up. What did all this mean? Fan Yi said that all of this seemed very strange to him. Wasn't their mission to find the unhardened flowers? It seemed to him that the leadership was determined to carry out this mission. But now they were unhappy that the squad had survived. Galan didn't bat an eye, continuing to keep our hero in the crosshairs of her pistol. The beautiful widow said they had always trusted Sister Galan, but if she was here, why hadn't she intervened? If it weren't for Fan Yi, their entire team would have already been wiped out. Yet Galan had stood aside and watched, and now she was trying to stir up trouble. Galan urged everyone to calm down and added that it was just a joke. The woman concluded that her comrades truly valued Fan Yi. The young man had passed the test. Su Qinying agreed with this. The widow, of course, was surprised. Fan Yi was surprised. Was the goal really to test him? Galan confirmed this. Given his talent and strength, she didn't want to rely on cold, lifeless reports. She needed to see with her own eyes what the young man was really like. Galan added that she hadn't intervened because pioneers could only follow the rules of the world of reborn spiritual energy. They were all the same. The fate of pioneers, everything changes in the blink of an eye. Galan added that Lin Yi was lucky to have someone who was strong and reliable. So far, no anomaly had attacked her, because they were all intimidated by Fan Yi's power. The darkest tide lives by the principle, oppress the weak and fear the strong. Galan promised to show them where to look for untempered flowers, since she knows the area well. Fan Yi thought this woman wasn't quite right in the head. Qinying said that her squad had once encountered the dark tide as well, but in the end, she was the only one who survived. Fan Yi thought that because of her attitude toward missions and rules, she displayed absolute obedience and coldness. Due to the death of her comrades, she had developed something like a self-destructive tendency stemming from post-traumatic stress disorder. At the same time, she still held on to a conviction that helped her move forward. Fan Yi said that this woman should be treated with leniency as if she were ill. Her spiritual defenses are severely damaged. Because of the shattered barrier, she has weakened by a full 2 ranks. This means she has sustained serious internal damage. The zone of utter darkness, the brothers' burial grounds. Galan stopped and said they had arrived. An untamed flower bloomed on the hillock. Its radiance could be seen from afar. Dark energy swirled around the flower. Galan reached out her hand and said that she could finally see it again. Fan Yi thought that something was wrong here. The young man shouted that they needed to be careful and hurled a fireball at Galan. Galan jumped aside and thought that this was an incredibly rare element of the sun. The woman was surprised. Could it be that she wasn't prepared enough? Su Qinying asked if Sister Galan was all right. She was heavily infected with the element of darkness. Maybe she should stay here. Feng Yi could go get the flower himself. Our hero calmly approached the unhardened flower. Suddenly, a huge monster created by the energy of darkness appeared above the young man. The monster said it was hungry. Fan Yi activated Divine Thunder, and the monster was struck by lightning. Fan Yi wondered how many people this fox shifter had devoured to mutate into such a state. Could this be another S-rank anomaly? He needed to finish it off quickly, retrieve the unrefined flower, and return. There was little time left. The werefox was still alive, and the young man decided to try something else. The boundless dark world was unveiled. Under the influence of the element of darkness within the boundless dark world, the fox shifter S-rank anomaly was downgraded to B rank. The level dropped by 2 at once. Even S-level anomalies in the zone of extreme darkness aren't that resilient. The werewolf was finished. Su Qinying asked, "Is this really the element of darkness?" However, it feels a little different. Lin Yi said that she didn't feel that nauseating and chilling sensation either. Galan said that this was because Fan Yi had mastered the element of darkness and created his own spatial domain. Creating a domain using spiritual power is incredibly difficult. The only one who had ever been able to do this using his element was the master. Aside from him, there are at most 3 people in the entire world with such an ability. The identities of the other 2 are unknown. When the teacher foresaw that an apocalyptic catastrophe threatened the capital, he expanded his spatial domain to suppress it. The girls noticed that Fan Yi was returning. Could it be that soon? The young man said that this mass grave should no longer cause any trouble. The protagonist was holding a flower. Now everything should be fine. Galan received the unhardened flower from the young man's hands. The girls thought the flower was very small. Fan Yi said that the mission was complete and they needed to retreat immediately. The dark tide could destroy the seal at any moment. The young man added that they also had a wounded person. Galan wholeheartedly thanked the young man for his invaluable help. After all, without his efforts, which turned the tide of battle, this mission would never have succeeded. Now it was time to leave. Sister Galan reiterated that she was sincerely grateful to Fan Yi. The woman added that the only diamond body rank master in the country of Xia, Elder Wu, was currently in critical condition. Therefore, the untamed flower was his only hope. The young man had saved his teacher's life. The widow said that they had finally made it out alive. Lin Yi said that she would finally see the sun again. Those present cheered. Could it be that the untamed flower had truly been obtained? Who had managed to obtain it? Lin Yi wondered, why were so many people waiting here? A transport from the Star Military Zone appeared before the squad. That very zone was the most powerful combat unit in the entire Xia nation. Everyone knew about this zone. That meant Galan was a high-ranking officer from the Star Military Zone. The Star Military Zone ranks first among the 10 great military zones of the Xia nation. Even in peacetime, it was renowned throughout the country for gathering the most elite fighters. After the revival of spiritual energy, the fighters gained unparalleled advantages. The squad greeted the representative of the High Command and presented him with an unhardened flower. Officers and other officials wanted to see the Tyrant Fan Yi in person. The officer stated that he would immediately deliver the unhardened flower to the hospital. Fan Yi asked Sister Galan if she was really from the Star military base. The woman confirmed this and noted that rumors about Fan Yi's strength and his actions had already spread throughout the unit, so soon everyone would know about the young man. Galan added that she had to admit, his strength would be enough to easily crush even the most elite team. Besides, she couldn't even fathom his potential. That meant it was limitless. If the young man is interested, is he willing to join them? In that case, he would gain access to the best resources for training. As for this mission, the reward for all squad members would be doubled. Fan Yi thanked her for the offer, but said he had his own training methods and pace, so he would decline the proposal. Galan warned that the world is currently undergoing drastic changes. The nation both values and fears dark element anomalies above all else. Their numbers are growing at an alarming rate, and the situation will only worsen in the future. Like malignant tumors, their influence continues to spread. Any anomaly could trigger a catastrophe at any moment. However, they are doing everything possible, creating restricted zones to contain them while the association guards the territories. Galan added that she believes such an exceptional person deserves to know the truth. She has no intention of making him feel guilty. Fan Yi said that if he encounters anomalies again, he won't stand idly by. He can be counted on for that. Galan said she was very pleased to meet such a young man and handed him a token. With this token, he could freely visit any restricted zone for training. Also, the gates of the Star Military Zone would always be open to him. Galan asked if the young man would like to visit Elder Wu. The woman said that the elder was her teacher. She thought it would be good for the young man to meet him. Fanya used the lightning element and said that the more friends, the more interesting it would be. This gesture would be a gift in honor of their friendship. Galan was surprised. What was this? The young man replied that he was certain he could purge the poison of the element of darkness that had accumulated in her body. Galan was surprised. Could the lightning element really even heal? Now her whole body tingled, and the cold and aching sensations had been replaced by warmth. The discomfort has passed, and the wounds left by the dark mist are healing. Even old injuries are disappearing, and her hair is becoming silkier. Her channels and meridians are being cleansed and restored. The toxins have been completely destroyed by this rare element of lightning. She feels as if she has been reborn. Fanyi asked how Galan was feeling now. The woman replied that she was fine now. The traces of dark energy had vanished. Su Qinying looked at the wounded man and wondered if he could still be saved. Although he held the rank of first star of soul creation, his injuries were too severe. Qinying was surprised. Where had Galan's wounds gone? Galan admitted that the pure energy of the lightning had completely cleansed her of the darkness element's poison. Captain Su was surprised. Could this really be the Tyrant's lightning? So the young man could both defeat enemies and save lives? Su Qinying rejoiced and shouted for the medical vehicle not to leave. Su Qinying asked the young man if they could work together. If they combined spiritual power with medical devices, they could save even more pioneers afflicted by dark energy. Qinying bowed and asked Fang Yi to help her once more. Fan Yi activated an electrical charge, produced a bolt of lightning, and asked if that was what she was interested in. The doctor was surprised. Could this really work? Such pure lightning power might indeed destroy the dark energy. Galan said that when Fan Yi channeled the lightning through her, the poison of the dark element had completely vanished. Did that mean that if he simply touched the wounded pioneers, they would be healed? There was a wounded pioneer of the soul creation rank. Qinyan said that not all pioneers can withstand such spiritual energy. The doctor noted that, according to their assessment, Galan's wounds were classified as minor injuries. It would have taken about 10 times more lightning energy than she received to treat that patient. It would be a miracle if he even survived. A full recovery is out of the question. Fan Yi asked how he could transfer his energy and whether the doctors could preserve it. The protagonist was asked to place his hand inside the device and release his spiritual energy. The young man followed the instructions exactly. Lin Yi never even suspected that Galan was actually a high-ranking officer from the Star Military Zone, and her cousin had even received an offer under special conditions. Fan Yi thought that Galan, who was always cold and aloof, had even personally offered to be friends with him. She had even given him her command badge. Fan Yi asked his cousin how she was feeling. The girl said she was fine. Lin Yi added that she and the widow wanted to go train and take on a few missions. Otherwise, they would never get stronger. The girl believed she had to catch up to her cousin as soon as possible. Fan Yak told them to focus on themselves first. The young man thought his cousin had really grown up. Su Shanying said she was leaving too. If they were lucky, they would meet on the next mission. Galan suggested again that they visit Elder Wu. Su Qinying was indignant because the Star Military Zone had snatched Fan Yi right from under their noses. All her efforts had been wasted. The structure of the Spiritual Energy Practitioners Association was still far too disorganized. Both at headquarters and in the branches, many behaved even more arrogantly than high-ranking military officers. The elite teams operate in isolation, let alone establishing relations with Fan Yi. It's good enough that some of them didn't come to cause trouble. Star Military Zone, hospital, medical base. The young man came to visit Elder Wu. Galan said it was very strange. A diamond body-level practitioner had turned into a frail old man. Before, his complexion was even worse. He looked like a zombie. Even after using the unrefined flower, he still hadn't regained consciousness. Fan Yi asked what he had gone through. Galan explained that when the calamity of the dark element struck the capital, the heavens were shrouded in darkness. To prevent the city's destruction, the teacher used his own body to seal it. Everyone also transferred their spiritual energy to him. They concluded that this cataclysm exceeded level S. Although the dark tide they had faced earlier had been quite terrifying, the destructive power of this catastrophe was several times stronger. Galan added that the destructive power could wipe the entire capital off the face of the earth and destroy the surrounding cities. In the capital, this was of immense significance. If it ceased to exist, the entire nation would plunge into chaos. Elder Wu used his own spiritual energy to seal the S-rank anomaly, but they never expected that even their combined forces against this calamity would still be insufficient. The master was struck by the dark element's counterattack. If he hadn't been a diamond body rank practitioner, he would have been reduced to ashes on the spot or become food for the dark anomaly. Fan Yi said that Elder Wu was an incredible pioneer, for he had protected the city from a terrible catastrophe. The young man thought that in his past life, he too had only been able to hold out for so long thanks to the pioneers. Perhaps by that point, Elder Wu had already fallen. Fan Yi reached out toward the sick man. Holland asked in alarm what the young man was going to do. The young man said there was no need to worry. Although the unrefined flower was already taking effect, he still wanted to try to purge some of the dark energy from the elder's body. Then he might wake up sooner. Galan was surprised since this was an S-level anomaly infection. Galan thought it over and agreed to let the young man try. Fan Yi used his unique abilities. The woman thought that a miracle might actually happen. Fan Yi placed his palm on the old man's chest. The elder's body glowed and structural changes began to occur. Galan said they had to be careful. This type of element was even more terrifying than the dark tide. Otherwise, the mentor wouldn't be recovering so slowly, even after using the unrefined flower. Fan Yi replied that he understood everything and could feel just how powerful this darkness was. Even though it was slightly weakened by the flower's purifying effect, a powerful pressure could still be felt. Galan told Fan Yi to focus and not get distracted. The darkness was beginning to affect him. Our hero noticed that he was in the middle of a ruined city. A blood-red eye was staring down at him from the sky. The young man realized that the darkness was pulling his consciousness into the past. Just a single touch of the element of darkness, and his mind was already so infected that hallucinations had begun to appear. Fan Yi said that he had come here to erase this darkness. This anomaly cannot be all-powerful. However, the darkness began to descend upon our hero, covering the entire sky. Many dark anomalies resembling insects appeared in the sky. Even if it's all an illusion, each anomaly is powerful, just like the ones he encountered in the dark tide. There were thousands of them here. Fan Yi said he had no choice. He would have to exterminate all the pests. A flaming sword appeared in our hero's hand. Fan Yi thought that this was exactly what Elder Wu had faced. He had to destroy all the anomalies throughout the entire city. Perhaps it was even worse, a boundless dark world. The darkness asked our hero, "Are you not human?" The young man activated the release skill. The protagonist found himself inside a dark sphere. He surmised that this was the residual consciousness of a darkness element anomaly. The consciousness was not alone. Could others return as well? The young man decided it was time to get out of there and used lightning against the insect-like anomalies. The next moment, our hero realized he was back in the hospital ward, still using his lightning skill. The unbelievable had happened. The lightning had captured the residual consciousness of the darkness element anomaly and pulled it out of Elder Yu's body. Immediately after that, the young man used the 9 Dragons Heavenly Fire Sealing technique. The anomaly was sealed. Galan realized that this was the element of darkness that had remained in her teacher's body. Fan Yi surmised that these were the remnants of the anomaly he had fought. It still carries powerful dark energy, but after the use of the unrefined flower and the Elder's own efforts, its influence has greatly weakened. Elder Wu truly lives up to his title as the pioneer of the Xia Nation. All this time, he had used his own body as a vessel to suppress the darkness. Anyone else in his place would have perished dozens of times over. Galan said that Fan Yi had just saved her master's life. Fan Yi said that it wasn't just thanks to his strength. If the flower hadn't weakened the anomaly, he wouldn't have been able to remove the residual darkness from his body. Galan agreed that the flower sustained his life, but the young man's efforts made his teacher's full recovery possible. Fan Yi said that in any case, the anomaly should now be completely neutralized. The young man added that in the illusion he had seen, the residual consciousness of the darkness element anomaly seemed to be warning that they would return. He added that they must be ready at any moment. When the time comes, they must not allow the old man to lead the battle again as soon as he recovers. Galan said that rumors had already reached her. The military and the association's monitoring departments regularly collect data on anomalies recorded throughout the country. These records are classified and strictly guarded to prevent leaks. However, even with the current reserves of power that the country of Xia possesses, It won't be possible to survive even the first year of a full-scale revival of spiritual energy. Yet no one wants to believe this. Fan Yi said that it sounded rather official, monitoring data on anomalies. Galan asked what the young man thought, whether these rumors were true. Fan Yi wondered, could his rebirth change the future itself? He remembers that he held out for 3 years after the revival of spiritual energy began, even though by that time Earth was already nearly destroyed. Fan Yi told Galan not to dwell on it. Elder Wu would soon wake up. If that anomaly returned, the young man promised to fight side by side with Galan, no matter what. The protagonist understood that this battle was inevitable in any case. However, this time he decided to change its outcome. Back at home, our hero assumed the lotus position and began to meditate. After 2 encounters with S-rank anomalies, the young man felt he was on the verge of breaking through to the 2nd star of soul creation. The rebirth of spiritual energy was just around the corner, and though he had already absorbed the element of darkness, it was still woefully insufficient. The anomaly the young man had seen in the illusion remained powerful even after several attempts to suppress it. Fan Yi opened his eyes and looked at the flower in the pot. The young man regretted not having taken the flower with him last time. The boy said he hadn't managed to prove himself and level up. He suggested the flower stretch its legs in the fresh air. Fan Yi found himself in the territory the association had set aside for him in the mountain valley. The young man thought that the Spiritual Energy Revival Plant Research Department wasn't half bad. The world was still in the early stages of spiritual revival. The restoration of nature had only just begun to develop in earnest. However, in such a short time, most of the burned trees had already grown back. The young man noticed that new flowers had appeared. He decided he would have to thank Su Qinying and the others somehow. Fan Yi pulled a flower out of the pot and said he shouldn't get too carried away. After all, with his appetite, he could wipe out every forest on the planet. Fan Yi placed the flower in the soil, and the plant immediately began absorbing energy from the ground. A few seconds later, Fan Yi said that was enough for now. They needed to move to another spot for absorption. Our hero was curious. Where would this flower rank among all plant life? Such an anomaly of the element of devastation should fall under level A. There were many animals on this mountain, but today our hero hadn't seen a single one. Perhaps they were terrified by the energy of desolation emanating from this plant. Suddenly, a loud howl rang out. Fan Yi was surprised. Could that really be the sound of a wolf? On a small cliff, there was indeed a wolf howling at the moon. At the foot of the cliff was its pack, a pack of evolved wolves. Fan Yi said that the king of wolves stood before him. It seemed that the evolution was nearly complete. The enormous monster, its eyes gleaming, growled menacingly at our hero, confirming the completion of its evolution. The protagonist felt a surge of spiritual energy. The Wolf King had advanced to an A-rank anomaly. After the evolution, the Wolf King's wood element acquired the properties of a corrosive poison, probably due to the absorption of dark energy. It seems that the dark element has been becoming more active lately. Could it really have endowed the Wolf King with a dual element? Fan Yi was convinced that the Wolf King had risen to level A. Our hero resolutely pulled the flower out of the pot. He had to destroy the Wolf King right now. Fan Yi planted the flower in the soil. Even if he is strong, the greater problem is the huge number of wolves. If they break through, the city at the foot of the mountain will be in danger. Fan Yi said he was ready to begin. The flower spread its roots, and the Wolf King launched an attack. The young man was curious to see just how destructive the power of the element of desolation would be if used on its own. The squad behind the mountain saw a surge of energy accompanied by a green stream shooting straight upward. The squad leader said that the Wolf King's evolution was complete. His aura was incredible. What was the contamination level? The leader was surprised when he heard the assistant say 90. The assistant added that the level continues to rise. The Wolf King's base power has reached the rank of the final star of the Spirit Axe, perhaps even the first star of soul creation. That's too powerful. The rest of the pack is roughly at the 2nd or 3rd star of the Spirit Axe rank. The hunter said there were too few of them. They wouldn't be able to win. Besides, the leader had only just broken through to the 3rd star of the Spirit Axe rank. The squad noticed that the element of darkness had manifested again. No wonder the infection level was so high. The hunter said he understood everything. The Wolf King had developed a dual attribute. Such a thing is almost unheard of among anomalies. The leader said that even if they couldn't win, they couldn't let these creatures complete their evolution. Otherwise, the entire city would be destroyed. They were cruel by nature, and after evolving, they had become even more terrifying. They needed to alert the association and request reinforcements. People felt the ground shaking beneath their feet. But how could wolves cause an earthquake? Most likely, this is another anomaly. The people looked up, assessed the ghostly apparitions, and concluded that it was an element of devastation. But where did it come from? The commander shouted that they must flee immediately and take cover. Could this be the vine that had disappeared not long ago? The squad leader shouted that they must immediately evacuate all nearby residents. However, it became clear that the element of desolation was not spreading in their direction. The vine was sinking deep into the mountain. It seemed strange, but the danger had simply passed. After a while, the vine began to produce flowers. What on earth was this? Flowers were already everywhere. At that moment, the Wolf King was approaching our hero. Yi said that these flowers would regenerate and multiply until they had drained the wolf pack of every last drop. Yi acknowledged that the Wolf King's body was protected by spiritual energy, so he would hold out a little longer. However, the same could not be said for the wolf pack, and indeed the remaining wolves were wrapped in the vine, which was sucking all the life out of them. The wolves growled and writhed, but could not break free. They were wasting away before his eyes. The vine only loosened its grip after nothing remained but lifeless skeletons. The climax came when a powerful green beam struck the king of the wolves. Yi noticed that the element of desolation from the spiritual flowers had already taken root deep within the forest. All around was an endless sea of flowers, born of the mountain and grown into it. Yi acknowledged that the Wolf King had gained intelligence through evolution, but he had never heard the saying, "Wild grasses do not perish completely, for the spring wind will make them bloom again." The wolf growled viciously in response. The wolf lunged toward the flower. The young man said that wasn't bad. The king of the wolves had even found the source. What would he do now? The king of wolves took a huge leap, intending to swallow the red flower. However, the exact opposite happened. The Wolf King was swallowed by the flower, which had grown in size. Yi was astonished. Had the flower really swallowed the Wolf King whole? Such all-consuming energy of devastation. What kind of power was this? Yi said he couldn't even imagine that after acquiring the element of devastation, these flowers would create their own spiritual art without his intervention. Once they entered this sea of flowers, no anomaly would ever escape. The enormous flower spat out a skeleton. That was all that remained of the Wolf King. The young man said that, by destroying again and again, the flowers would regenerate, leaving only the bones of the anomaly beneath an endless wave of desolation. The young man decided to call this the Endless Spiritual Sea. The flower successfully mastered the element of devastation skill, Infinite Spiritual Sea. Yi said that now it was the flower's turn to evolve. Headquarters confirmed that an abnormal Class A contamination had been detected. Two completely different spiritual energies have appeared in the contaminated zone. Aside from the evolution of the Wolf King, with the element of darkness, the origin of the other energy, the element of desolation, remains unknown. The director inquired about the location. A report came in stating that it was located in the foothill forest, the very area Captain Su Qinying had previously been monitoring. The director was surprised. Hadn't the destroyer squad been sent to stop the wolf pack? The commander of the destroyer squad reported that a powerful burst of the element of devastation had occurred at the site of the wolf pack's mutation. The readings are off the charts. The energy completely destroyed the level A anomaly of the Wolf King, after which the anomaly retreated deep into the mountain. Strange mountain flowers are now blooming everywhere. It's simply unnatural. They can't get close because they don't know how dangerous this energy of desolation is. The squad commander said that if this unknown anomaly manifests in any way, the damage would easily exceed that caused by the vines earlier. Reinforcements should be requested. The pioneers might not be able to handle it. The director replied that he would send 2 elite squads to assist. Su Jinying couldn't shake a nagging feeling. She believed that Yi was involved in this matter. Qinying told the director that this time, the source of the destructive energy was surely Yi. His house was located right in that area. The girl added that this guy would protect everyone here. The young man said that after devouring the Wolf King, the flower had evolved again. Could it be that it had obtained a second element? The second element turned out to be the element of fire, and this came as a surprise to the young man. Yi couldn't believe that the flower could evolve simply through absorption. After all, that's a very easy path to development. The spirit flower had devoured the mutated Wolf King and his pack. The evolution was complete. The blazing flower of the void, an A-rank anomaly. Yi remembered the boundless dark world. The young man couldn't believe he hadn't thought to place the flower there himself. The soil and anomalies of that world are steeped in darkness. If the flower absorbs this energy, it will evolve again, gaining the element of darkness. The protagonist realized he had broken through to the second star of soul creation. It felt much easier to channel his power. The spiritual energy of the earth and the heavens flowed into his body as if they were one. The young man saw Fan Yi hovering above the forest and said that he had finally found him. Now it was clear where this guy had been hiding. The man said that before him stood the legendary master of the celestial fire element and a holder of the second star of soul creation. It was very exciting. The man added that he simply had to break the pride of the pioneer with the fire element. He would make everyone acknowledge that he was the first among the pioneers with the fire element. Fan Yi was surprised. Who is here? Could it really be a pioneer of the fire element? Fan Yi said that this person had finally shown himself and directed the element of darkness, shrouded in the element of fire. Fan Yi thought that he had been hiding there all this time, barely concealing his energy. A newcomer who had only just reached the rank of the soul creation. It was Zhang Lu. He answers to no one and belongs to no organization. A free-spirited pioneer, thirsty for battle. Zhang Lu said that this guy was very interesting. He sensed a strong spiritual pressure emanating from him. How had he managed to dodge the stream of flying flames? Zhang Lu said he seemed to have forgotten to introduce himself and gave his name. The free-spirited pioneer lunged at our hero and said that the guy would remember that name for a long time. Fan Yi activated Divine Thunder. Zhang Lu was counterattacked and deactivated. He never understood what had happened. Wasn't this guy a pioneer with the fire element? Kneeling on the ground, Zhang Lu was forced to bow his head. The protagonist grabbed his opponent by the head and slammed it into the ground. Fan Yi said he hadn't heard and asked, "What is this guy's name anyway?" Zhang Lu still couldn't understand how this had happened. After all, he was a master, a pioneer at the first star level of soul creation. He had reached this rank faster than anyone else. Zhang Lu believed that his trump card was one of the rarest high-level elements. Fire. With such power and rank, he shouldn't have any rivals at all. Everyone should bow down to him and flatter him. Only then would they gain any benefit from this spiritual rebirth. Zhang Lu couldn't figure out where this guy's lightning had come from. It had swallowed the flame, and now he couldn't even move. Fan Yi was surprised. Could this really be Zhang Lu's true power? Fan Yi, still holding his opponent in place, remarked that today's youth were very self-assured. Zhang Lu was surprised because this guy hadn't even reached the second star of soul creation. Why did his power and pressure feel as if he were a pioneer 3 levels higher? Zhang Lu was frightened and shouted for the young man to leave him alone. Fan Yi released his opponent's head and said he wanted to offer some advice. A pioneer's power is not meant to be used against people. The young man added that if Zhang Lu had time to start fights, he'd be better off spending it on destroying rampaging anomalies. Zhang Lu watched the young man walk away and thought, is there something wrong with him? Zhang Lu found it simply unbelievable. Could he really have been that weak? Zhang Lu returned to the city and went to his office. His colleagues were waiting for Zhang Lu in the office. One of those present looked at Zhang Lu and said that his new hairstyle suited him. Another colleague reminded him that fights never lead to anything good. A colleague said he couldn't keep going like this, even if Zhang Lu had a bad temper. The revival of spiritual energy hadn't even fully begun yet. Compared to what was coming, they were practically dust in the wind. It wasn't worth making enemies. The man added that one day, because of this eagerness to fight everyone, they're bound to run into trouble. His colleague asked Zhang Lu if he was okay, since he wasn't reacting at all. Wasn't he going to challenge that heavenly fire strike guy? What happened there? Zhang Lu admitted that he'd been knocked out with a single blow. His comrades refused to believe him and demanded an explanation. Zhang Lu burst into tears like a child and repeated that he'd been knocked out with a single blow. Zhang Lu clutched his head and said that if he had backed down, he wouldn't have had to humiliate himself like this. The victim added that it all happened in an instant. He didn't even understand what was going on. His best technique, flying flame stream, was completely crushed by the thunder. A colleague remarked that Zhang Lu's fire element possessed an incredibly pure nature. It was unlikely anyone else could be as strong without being in a combat zone. Does Zhang Lu remember that when he first awoke and fought for resources, he defeated 2 more 3rd-star Ghost Axe pioneers? Both were of the same element. It's possible that the heavenly fire strike Zhang Lu encountered wasn't the work of a pioneer at all. Zhang Lu said there could be no mistake. This was definitely his territory. It was hard to understand unless you saw it with your own eyes. Zhang Lu was terrified and said it was a true monster. It was a deafening, furious thunderclap, as if the heavens themselves had unleashed their roar directly into his ears. The pressure made it feel as though his head was about to explode. A voice inside him screamed that it was him. He was a pioneer with two elements, fire and thunder, both of the highest class. His lightning surpassed flames by several orders of magnitude. This man was clearly hiding his true power. He was at least at the 3rd-star level of soul creation. My colleague said that was impossible. A free-spirited pioneer with 3 stars. In that case, this guy could become the worst nightmare for the other pioneers. Such strength and talent are simply terrifying. Zhonglu repeated that the man had crushed him with a single move. Zhonglu pondered, maybe he should go and learn from him. During his next meditation session, our hero sensed something strange. He was on the verge of breaking through to the 2nd star of soul creation, but for some reason, this surge of potential suddenly vanished. Fan Yi understood that the problem wasn't with his body. There must be an external cause. For some reason, the surrounding spiritual energy no longer resonated. He couldn't create the necessary environment for the breakthrough. The young man thought, could something serious really be about to happen? Fan Yi wondered, could it be that the spiritual revival was beginning ahead of schedule in his city? The young man thought he should contact Galan and check on the military situation. However, the phone said the subscriber was temporarily unavailable. The protagonist thought, could the military have already moved to the front lines? But surely in the event of a serious anomaly, he would have been notified by now. The worst-case scenario is a forced communication blackout. A phone call came in from Captain Su Qinying. The girl said the situation had changed. Reinforcements needed to be requested. The young man asked, are there many anomalies in the city? Qinying said that the problem was much more serious. She was in the city. After that, the connection was cut off. An anomaly flew through the window. The glass cracked but held. After another blow, the glass shattered into tiny shards, and the anomaly entered the room. Fan Yu jumped aside and destroyed the anomaly. The next moment, Lin Yi ran into the room and told her cousin that a bat-type anomaly had appeared. The girl saw the broken window and asked what had happened here. Lin Yi noted that anomalies usually appeared unexpectedly, but it was unusual for them to fly straight into houses. Fan Yu agreed that this was bad and expressed hope that he could handle it. The young man looked up at the dark sky and the lightning flashing across it. He said that in the worst-case scenario, this place could be dragged into a massive catastrophe, the kind they'd only heard about on the news. 2nd-star ghost axe anomalies usually hide in the shadows, not run amok on busy streets, not to mention attacking a pioneer's home. The young man added that a real battle awaited them, but he didn't know exactly what was coming. They needed to gather all the pioneers they could reach. Fan Yi said he was entrusting the safety of the house to his niece. After all, she was almost at the threshold of the soul creation rank. They must exercise caution and not let any anomalies in. Captain Su realized that the connection was unstable, so Fan Yi probably hadn't heard where they were. If a large-scale disaster really does begin, they'll have to handle it on their own, although perhaps the instruments had simply malfunctioned. What does anomaly of an undefined level even mean? Su Jinying expressed hope that it was just a false alarm. The girl requested a report from the patrols on the contamination level in Area A. Everyone must exercise caution and report any fluctuations in contamination readings. The girl sensed something was wrong and looked up. Bat-like anomalies began descending from the sky to the ground. A signal was received indicating that multiple anomalies had been detected. The city is about to face the strongest storm in half a century. Several red alert levels have already been declared. All public events have been canceled. Citizens were asked to stay indoors and follow safety precautions. Citizens hid in their homes, not understanding what was happening. The sky looked very eerie. Could something bad really be happening? What on earth is going on in the world? Motorcyclists riding through the city noted that the weather had deteriorated significantly. A colleague asked Zhonglu, maybe it would be better not to go after all. There was silence in response. Zhonglu was attacked by an anomaly while riding. The young man was outraged, stopped, and fought back using the element of fire. He was surprised because small creatures usually stay away from his fire element. However, even after being hit by the fire, the bat didn't burn up. His colleague explained that it wasn't like that at all. The bat had burned, but it had come back to life. In this place, not only humans but also anomalies are monstrously powerful. A few hours earlier, a briefing had taken place between the military and top leadership. It was decided to establish close cooperation with Fan Yi. A report came in from the squad commander in the city center. An anomaly of level A is expected to appear in the city center within the next 24 hours. A massive swarm of anomalous bats has already gathered on the outskirts of the city. Captain Su Qinying said that teams must be dispatched immediately. She and her squad were also moving out. An officer reported that according to the latest forecast, the approaching anomaly is level S. The military district was also under attack by bat-type anomalies. Galan fought selflessly side by side with the other soldiers, repelling the anomalies' attacks. Galan possessed the ability to mutate spiritual energy, which allowed her to transform spiritual energy into any form and amplify it, doubling its power. Galan thought that these bats were continuing to multiply. They were impossible to destroy. It felt as though they were trying to prevent something from being done. The assistant reported that Galan's wounds had healed well. The commander seemed to have gained even greater strength. The young man reported that things were looking rather grim. Of the senior officers, only the two of them remained to hold the defense in this area. He was awaiting further instructions. Galan said that signals here were being jammed by the anomaly, and the jamming suppression systems had failed. They were unable to contact the field units. The commander ordered the units to stay and hold this line. The bats must not be allowed to reach the restricted zone. Galan added that everyone else must follow her. They need to break through and link up with groups from other districts. The anomaly's target is not the restricted zone, but the entire city. The townspeople were fleeing from the onset of a downpour. The streamer noted that heavy rain was starting. "We need to grab raincoats and keep filming. Creepy weather is trending right now." The girl said that, just like last time, we need to risk everything to get that one viral shot. The streamer screamed in terror. The young man standing next to her was attacked by a bloodthirsty anomaly. The girl was terrified and ran away. She didn't understand where it had come from. Gunshots could also be heard. Someone was screaming that the bats were biting people and drinking their blood dry. The girl screamed in fear and called for help. The bat had almost caught up to her. Completely unexpectedly, with a swift swing of a sword, the anomaly was destroyed. The girl was saved. The girl looked back and saw a rescue squad led by Captain Su Qinying standing before her. The captain held out her hand and said that her assistant would escort the girl home. Qinying told her assistant to make sure the girl arrived safely. The captain was informed that the number of S-level bats continues to grow. There are also signs of further evolution. Qinying said they needed to hurry and provide a safe place for the citizens, as the anomalies were evolving by feeding on human blood and flesh. Su Qinying informed the members of her squad that the meeting point would be here once the civilians were safe. Feng Yi was also moving through the city, eliminating local clusters of anomalies. The young man was astonished. Had these mice really evolved to the 3rd star level of the Phantom Axe? However, these anomalies were unlike any others. The swarms multiply and mutate. It is simply impossible to completely destroy them. In every densely populated district of the city, there is a cluster of dark element anomalies with an extremely high concentration of energy. It was as if a multitude of identical infection zones had appeared simultaneously, each capable of causing a massive catastrophe. That meant it would take more time to find the association's staff. He would have to deal with these anomalies on his own. Fan Yi said they would become food for his flower. Fan Yi thought that most of the pioneers he'd been on a team with should already be home. Given his cousin's abilities, the help of those pioneers, and the many hiding places in the buildings, they should be relatively safe. But if the disaster gains momentum, that nightmare could become reality. It won't be easy. Su Qinying felt frustrated. No matter how many bats she destroyed, there was no end to them. The girl realized that her spiritual energy was recovering too slowly. Besides, it wasn't clear if everything was okay. Su Qinying heard cries for help. Above her head was a swarm of bats. Without hesitation, the girl rushed to help. If these creatures continued to evolve, they could reach the soul creation rank. Anomalies had already begun attacking people inside the buildings. If this continues, a king of anomalies will soon be born. The city is inexorably plunging into chaos. The level of this anomaly is no less than that which nearly destroyed the capital. No one can stop it. Not even the association or the military has anyone who can turn the tide. The entire city is on the brink of destruction. A squad of pathfinders in Sector A sacrificed their lives to summon a cloud of spiritual energy to slow the spread of the bats. In Sector B, a group of pathfinders lured the anomaly into an encirclement and also released a cloud of spiritual energy, perishing along with the swarm of anomalies. The disaster response headquarters received information that the pathfinders had suffered heavy losses. The number of bats is too great, and their rate of regeneration far exceeds our defensive capabilities. The emergency response plan has been activated. But even if reinforcements from other areas attempt to break through, they won't make it in time. The assistant reported to the director that the city was surrounded by a massive black veil. Troops from neighboring zones and rescue teams could not get inside. The situation is such that they have been cut off from the rest. The moment has come that will decide the city's fate. The director said that as a pioneer, he was ready to stand his ground until the end and fall alongside everyone else, defending the city's independence. The leader declared that the anomalies would have to be destroyed if they hoped to win. There is no other option. The code word "final" must be transmitted to headquarters. The second line of defense will not be able to contain the catastrophe. To stop the further spread of the element of darkness, a preemptive strike must be launched immediately. Su Jinying realized her spiritual energy reserves were nearly depleted. If this continued, she wouldn't last much longer. A third-star soul creation level anomaly appeared before her. Jinying noticed that her spiritual energy was nearly depleted. She was completely exhausted. The squad captain could no longer withstand this anomaly. Su Jinying decided she had no other choice and gathered her strength. Even if she died, she had to destroy this rampant anomaly. However, Jinying saw that fire magic had been used against the anomaly. The anomaly had been burned away. Jinying was delighted to see that Fan Yi had come to her aid. The young man switched from fire to lightning and continued the attack. It seemed unbelievable. Fan Yi apologized and said that the search had taken some time. There were too many swarms of anomalies on the way here. Jinying warned that the anomalies might regenerate. Fan Yi looked at the swarm of bats overhead and said he was aware of that. The young man told the girl not to worry. If he promised something, he kept his word. The boundless dark world, revelation of the realm, was activated. Su Jinying thought that she could truly count on this man. It was a good thing that Fan Yi, the unrivaled pioneer, was still in this city. Jinying thanked the young man for his timely rescue. The girl said she still had some restorative items that should help. Fan Yi warned that he had purged some of the dark element energy. At the first opportunity, Jinying should bandage her wounds. The captain thought that high-level lightning magic was simply incredible. The wounds were much smaller, and healing was proceeding faster than with the association's restorative medicine. The hair on her head had also become silkier. At the anomaly response headquarters, they noted that the swarms of bats had thinned out significantly. An employee reported that all rescue teams around the city had been attacked, and contact with them had been lost. It was still impossible to get inside. The number of anomalies outside remained unchanged. The director reported that the number of pioneers in the city is decreasing, and no unit has yet made contact. There is speculation that the king of anomalies will appear soon. The swarms of bats are thinning out only because they are gathering for his birth. One of the staff members said he wanted to go home to see his parents, but he probably won't be able to return. Fan Yi asked Captain Su Jinying, "Is there any information on what this actually is?" The girl replied that it is Anna Maria, a Super S-level entity. She can devour an entire city. Her power is no less than that which was sealed in the Star Military Zone. She added that people usually call this a catastrophe. The cocoon they see above is like a warning of the catastrophe, a sign of sorts. People sense the approaching disaster but cannot stop it. Something terrifying is brewing inside it. If it is born, the entire city will be destroyed. Now there is a more scientific explanation for such an anomaly. Research shows that anomalies of even the same species devour and attack one another. In their chain of mutations, devouring for the sake of evolution is the fastest path to ascension. Elements of darkness act differently. Bats are a typical example of this. An individual with perfect evolution exerts a pressure-like effect on its kin. Ordinary anomalies instinctively assume the role of servants. The girl added that such an individual is called the king of anomalies. Jinying noted that the young man had not yet reached the diamond body rank. Moreover, the strongest pioneer had been bedridden since sealing the catastrophe. Unhardened flowers were required for his recovery. Su Jinying said that they didn't want to lose another genius first pioneer. If there was a chance, the young man should leave now, break through the barrier of anomalies, and escape to the outside. He should contact the military and tell them to secure this place. Fan Yi patted the girl on the head and asked, "Could it be that over 20 years of study have gone to waste because of the spiritual energy revival?" The young man added that this was his home. He would stay, even if it meant paying a high price. The protagonist activated the flame sword and prepared for a fierce confrontation. Fan Yi said he wouldn't allow the entire city to be sacrificed to celebrate the king's birthday. Golden Breath of the Sun, release, was activated. Fan Yi asked the girl to lend him a support device for a while. This device was supposed to detect anomalies and contact the association. The protagonist promised to go up and stop the anomaly before it was too late. The decision center began receiving a signal again from the missing pioneer. It was a signal from Captain Su Qinying. However, the captain's speed seemed too incredible. Why was she heading toward the highest concentration of infection? She must be brought back immediately. This could lead to irreversible consequences. The colonel ordered Captain Su Qinying to respond to him immediately. The captain must cease her actions and avoid unnecessary casualties. It is necessary to wait for support from the association's headquarters and the military, as well as to carefully devise a plan of action. Fan Yi realized the device was working and asked if anyone could hear him. The colonel asked, "Who is on the line, and where is Captain Su Qinying?" Fan Yi said that they needed to establish contact with him. He would destroy the king at the center of the anomalous zone. The colonel couldn't believe what he was hearing. The young man warned, if headquarters did not want the city to fall prey to the enemy or be wiped off the face of the earth, they must hand over all available equipment and intelligence data to him. Assistance was needed in striking the great cocoon and destroying it. The colonel took a proactive stance and ordered everyone to coordinate with this man. Any surviving satellite radars must be used to detect the nearest sources of anomalies. Headquarters must relay all available information to this hero. A report has come in stating that satellite images show the great cocoon is surrounded by swarms of anomalies. Their density increases as they approach. They swirl like a typhoon. The northern direction has relatively fewer anomalies. This is the best route for a breakthrough. The main roads are blocked by anomalies. There is a proposal to break through via secondary roads in a southeasterly direction. Headquarters reported that Fan Yi has spotted the anomalies, and they are approaching him. 2 targets have been identified. Their power is comparable to the 2nd-star level of soul creation. Fan Yi, using his tactical skills, immediately attacked the approaching anomalies. The colonel said in surprise that the source of the anomalies had vanished. This man destroys S-level dark element anomalies with a single strike. Everyone at headquarters shouted that this was the very Tyrant, meaning they were saved. That very unknown master is right here, right now. No one expected this first pioneer to end up in the city center. Our hero noticed that after the breakthrough, the element of fire had gained resistance to dark element anomalies. Therefore, it significantly slows down their regeneration. Fan Yi decided he would have to rely on speed and relentless high-frequency attacks. However, the endless swarms of anomalies were a major hindrance. The Pioneer Squad was puzzled. What was going on? The bats had stopped attacking. The director said this did not bode well, and there was only one explanation. The King of Anomalies had recalled them. Could he be hastening his own birth? If the swarm of bats was already retreating outside the city, did they stand a chance? Galan was still at her combat post, relentlessly attacking the anomalies. The commander asked her subordinate, how much longer until the city center? The young man replied that according to his astronomical instruments, it would be at least another half hour. Galan said that by then, the King of Anomalies would already have been born, and the city would be gone. How could this be stopped? The assistant said that the number of these mice far exceeded initial estimates, 10 times more than the expected number of S-level ones. Even with large caliber ammunition, it would be impossible to destroy them all. Galan added, if this continues, nearby cities will soon be overrun by the element of darkness. We still don't have enough people for a breakthrough. The assistant acknowledged that some of the first pioneers were simply standing on the sidelines, as if the catastrophe didn't concern them. Galan noted that swarms of bats were gathering at the place where the King of Anomalies was to be born. However, a bright pillar of fire appeared at that spot. Could it be Fan Yi? Galan ordered all units to intensify their fire support. Don't worry about the cost, they must enter the city. A massive fire dragon began devouring the swarms of anomalies. Everyone acknowledged that it was a veritable sea of flames. Lin Yi said she recognized her cousin's sword technique. Fan Yi realized that the bats were gathering to stop him. That was their strategic mistake. The protagonist said that was exactly what he wanted. A powerful fire explosion occurred in the sea of flames, comparable in power to a thermonuclear explosion. The young man felt that sensation again. Even amidst the polluted spiritual energy, he sensed he was close to a breakthrough. The boundless dark world was activated. Fanyak summoned the spiritual flower. The enormous sphere shattered, and a red flower of incredible size emerged before the swarm of bats. Fan Yi told the flower to dry them out completely and help him break through. The element of devastation was released. The flower prepared to activate its powers. At some point, our hero found himself inside the flower. Fan Yi thought that while he had been chasing the cocoon through the sky, he had realized that in the air, this cocoon looked like some kind of distorted and sinister phenomenon. But in reality, it was more like an illusion, visible, but not tangible. Fan Yi thought he could hear the king's heartbeat. Like war drums on ancient battlefields, it was muffled, primal, and wild. It declares war on all living creatures, stirring up the darkest and most insane desires hidden in the human heart. However, if the king does not yet wish to reveal himself, it means he is not fully hatched. A report came in that the exact location had been determined. The king's position was synchronized with the devices. Fan Yi directed a beam from his wrist gadget straight at the epicenter. Now the king cannot hide from him. Fan Yi activated the golden breath of the sun technique. A complete release occurred. A blinding flash appeared in the sky. Those in the know realized that the element of fire had been used. However, the element of fire had never possessed such power and could not suppress the darkness. This was definitely the element of the sun, pure, radiant, the highest element, completely opposite to the element of darkness. At headquarters, they noted that the number of anomalies was rapidly dropping. The radius of the affected area was shrinking, and the density of anomalies was decreasing. It seemed unbelievable. Military armored vehicles headed for the location closest to the epicenter. A report came in that the cluster of flying anomalies blocking the armed forces was receiving some kind of signal. They were retreating, returning to the city. Galan realized that Fan Yi was going to attack the cocoon of the King of Anomalies. The assistant said that Tyrant was now known by another nickname, Heavenly Flame Blade. Even if he possessed the purest form of the sun element, could one really fight the King of Anomalies alone? Galan said it was time to act and ordered them to return to the city. However, incredible events began to unfold in the sky. It became clear that the King of Anomalies was hatching prematurely. The acceleration of his evolution was caused by the cursed source of evil. Lin Yi was outraged. She said that if they merely defended themselves, they would surely perish. Something had to be done. Help her cousin at any cost. The creature inside that cocoon was determined to be born at the cost of everyone's lives in this city. To act more quickly, Su Qinying sped up the process of treating her injured colleagues. Lin Yi said she understood everything. The flower her cousin had summoned had absorbed the power of countless bats. It was just like that vine they had encountered earlier. The girl realized that her cousin had also mastered the element of devastation. In that case, they needed to direct all their spiritual energy into the network of plants her cousin had created. The plants would absorb their power. The director was surprised. Could it be that the pioneers were gathering spiritual energy to attack the anomalies? But their strength wasn't enough to reach the plants at such a height. The director said, if the pioneers were directing their energy into the plants summoned by Fan Yi, then he would help as well. The director's energy concentrated at the highest level. Many joined him. Su Qinying raised her head and realized that this was the combined spiritual energy of all the pioneers in the city. Su Qinying said that in that case, the Anomaly King would face resistance from everyone born here. Fan Yi received a message that a swarm of flying anomalies from beyond the city limits was rushing straight toward him. Thousands upon thousands of anomalies surrounded our hero, with the aim of launching a massive attack against him. Fan Yi said he didn't care. No matter how many servants the king summoned, he would destroy them all. The young man said that the King of Anomalies was in such a hurry to be born because he was afraid of being destroyed before that happened. The cocoon burst open, and the King of Anomalies burst out. The Pioneer Squad felt an earthquake. Could this be the power of the King of Anomalies? His mere appearance alone was capable of destroying the entire city. The people watching this phenomenon thought that Fan Yi must win. Fan Yi solemnly declared that the King of Anomalies of Darkness was the true culprit behind this catastrophe. The young man said that he was born and raised here. He loves this city and this life. The protagonist said that the King of Anomalies must die. In response, he heard that he was considered a pitiful second-star soul creation level. Did he really dare to challenge him? Fan Yi thought things were looking bad. The King of Anomalies was indeed different from ordinary anomalies. He withstood the full force of his attack and remained unharmed. Even after the king was severely scorched by the sun element, he was able to swallow our hero. His digestive juices possess powerful corrosive properties. The concentration of the darkness element contained within is simply off the charts. Fan Yi thought that if an ordinary pioneer had been in his place, there would have been nothing left of him long ago. However, this seemed strange to the young man. An anomaly that had evolved to such a stage must possess a developed intellect. Wasn't the king afraid of being attacked from within? After all, the body's insides are its most vulnerable spot. Fan Yi didn't hesitate and attacked from the inside, using fire magic. The attack did not produce the desired result. Fan Yi concluded that his abilities were significantly weakened by the Anomaly King's slime. He also thought that he could still inflict some damage, so there was still a chance. The spirit flower was summoned. Fan Yi thought, when the King of Anomalies clashed with him in battle, he had swallowed the spirit flower as well. The flower had already absorbed enough of the dark element, and on top of that, the spiritual energy transmitted by the other first pioneers. The protagonist looked at the spirit flower and was surprised. Could it be that it didn't like the element of darkness? Fan Yi hadn't expected that the spiritual flower, possessing the element of devastation, would repel the element of darkness absorbed by the King of Anomalies. However, the people watching the events from Earth didn't understand what was happening to the King of Anomalies. Lin Yi didn't understand what was happening there, or where her cousin had gone. The pioneers evacuated civilians in an orderly manner, without panic or stampedes. They must do everything possible to ensure everyone's safety. Su Gunying wondered, could it be that Fan Yi was fighting the King of Anomalies inside? They had to quickly finish evacuating the civilians before the King of Anomalies and the bats attacked the city. Galan said that they needed to minimize potential damage. They had to act quickly. They couldn't take any risks. A breach occurred in the inner shell, and the young man began to be flooded with green liquid. A little more, and our hero was completely submerged in the liquid. The next moment, our hero found himself on the street of a ruined city. A huge monster was staring at him. Fan Yi felt the gaze and spun around sharply. The monster attacked him. Fan Yi managed to dodge the attack, and the monster missed. Fan Yi thought that if he was able to dodge, it meant his body possessed the same strength as before he was transported here. The Anomaly King's ability tried in vain to make him think he had returned to his past life. His opponent wanted him to believe that he hadn't awakened yet and hadn't become a pioneer. Fan Yi continued to dodge the monster's attacks. The young man understood that the King of Anomalies wasn't strong enough to strip him of all his power. The King of Anomalies wasn't stronger. Fan Yi thought that if his abilities hadn't disappeared, he needed to figure out how to break through this barrier. In this illusory reality, there must be a weak point, a vulnerability that the King of Anomalies had exposed to him. At some point, Fan Yi found himself trapped in the monster's fist. The monster said that he was dealing with a true fool. For once he had ended up here, he would never be able to escape. The monster began to merge into one with our hero. The monster declared that it was all over, that this was his destiny and his fate. The monster said that the man must accept this. Even if he had gained some power, it meant nothing. After the building collapsed, many of the pioneers suffered serious injuries. The monster declared that humans were nothing more than nutrients for its evolution. Fan Yi smiled and asked, "Is that really all the King of Anomalies is capable of?" The young man added that he had done this to protect his home and everyone around him. That was why he had returned to the past. The protagonist said that now he was waiting for the system to log out. A notification appeared stating that the user met the requirements for a breakthrough. Fan Yi said he had to thank the King of Anomalies, for he had helped him realize that his situation was an event that had changed the course of this world's history, a world that would otherwise have been swallowed up by his race. The young man added that he was the chosen Avenger. In response, the King of Anomalies called the young man a pathetic and insignificant ant. He believed that there was true power within this man, but how could one dare to challenge him when he was merely at the second star level of soul creation? The monster said that the man could no longer escape and would become his food. However, something unexpected happened. The monster's body began to be consumed by the energy of fire. The monster grew furious and called the man vile and repulsive. Fan Yi activated the funeral seal. The young man used the Nine Dragons' heavenly fire seal. Evil must be destroyed. The order was given to destroy all anomalies. People saw a bright flash where, just moments ago, there had been a cocoon, and then the King of Anomalies. The boundless dark world was activated once more. Civilians and soldiers breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was all over. People rejoiced, for the city had been saved. They had survived. Galan said that the sun was rising. The assistant asked if the commander planned to celebrate. Galan replied that she still had work to do. She needed to help people return to normal life and restore the city to its former state. At headquarters, they were also celebrating the victory. They had managed to stop the King of Anomalies. They had done it. How wonderful that Fan Yi had appeared and defeated the King of Anomalies. Su Qinying looked at the wounded and asked the director, "Will they survive?" The director replied that there was nothing to worry about. The medical center hadn't been destroyed by the bats. Su Qinying said that if it weren't for Fan Yi, few would have survived. Why is this guy so strong? He always turns the tide and accomplishes the impossible. The director suggested that after this battle, headquarters would definitely take appropriate measures. The captain added that what had happened in the sky was a clear sign that he had reached the second star level of soul creation. Someone is bound to contact this guy before they do. The girl realized that when she first started watching this guy, she thought they could compete, but now he had left her far behind. After getting to know him, she realized just how boundless his fortitude and talent were. His true power was surely even greater. The director thought of the golden light piercing the clouds, of the fire dragon sealing and destroying anomalies. Everyone could see it. Heated discussions were inevitable. Moreover, rumors would spread not only among the pioneers, but also among ordinary citizens. He needed to act preemptively. The director said, "The gravedigger sounds good. What does the captain think?" Lin Yi was running around the city looking for her cousin. The beautiful widow asked the girl not to panic. Lin Yi finally spotted Fan Yi and ran up to him. The young man asked, "Why were you looking for me?" Lin Yi asked if he was okay. Her cousin said she had come to offer whatever help she could. Fang Yi replied that he was fine and added that the girls had done well too. The young man understood that the king of anomalies was powerful and felt he hadn't looked so pitiful in a long time. The final blow in the ceiling had drained almost all his spiritual energy immediately after his rank had been consolidated. Now he had to make these girls worry. Lin Yi asked, "Has my cousin made another breakthrough? Is this the second soul creation star?" What a terrifying rate of progress. Social media was abuzz with discussions about whether the man who saved the city was a super pioneer. Who was this mysterious master, known as the gravedigger, who had defeated the king of anomalies with a single strike? Zhenglu watched the recording several times and couldn't believe his eyes. It was definitely him. There was no mistake. Had he really defeated the king of anomalies single-handedly? Zhenglu said that losing to such a master was a great honor. His colleague asked where Zhenglu was going. The young man replied that he intended to become this man's disciple. His colleague said it would be better not to do that. Many people would be looking for him now. The capital of the Xia Kingdom, the city was situated at the foot of the mountains. All members of the High Council were present at this meeting. Everyone was required to speak about the incident. One man said he had hoped to watch the military and the association tear each other to pieces, so he was disappointed. Another person asked, "Aren't you eager to get a good gun and fight him?" A woman declared that it wouldn't work that way. The Savior, blessed by heaven, a simple weapon won't take him down. The woman added that they shouldn't rush into things. No matter how powerful this guy is, he'll be destroyed because he stood in the way. There was a knock at the door. The visitors asked if Fan Yi lived there. Standing at the door were the director and the captain. On behalf of the Association of Spiritual Energy Practitioners, they expressed their sincere gratitude and brought gifts. The young man invited the guests inside to have some fragrant tea. Yu Qinying got a sense of what an important person's home looked like and thought the association could have provided much better accommodations. The director said that the association had sent them here to enlist Fan Yi's support on a matter. They planned to promote the title of Burial Master. Currently, in the country of Xi, powerful pioneers have emerged in every city. Their fame has spread far and wide, and they are quite well-known figures in pioneer circles. The recent S-level anomaly is now considered one of the most horrific disasters. Therefore, they want to promote the title of Gravedigger so that following a spiritual revival, Taizhou can become a key strategic metropolis. After this disaster, they realize that the city needs a well-known, powerful pioneer to serve as a leader. Qinying said that in the future, celestial phenomena will become more frequent, and there will be more anomaly invasions. We cannot allow a situation where people are practically left to fend for themselves. The girl added that if it weren't for Fan Yi, everyone in this city would already be dead. It all comes down to the difference in the manner of death. Su Qinying said that even after spiritual energy appeared in this world, she still hadn't realized just how cruel the world had become. Fan Yi told Lin Yi not to be such a pessimist. Fan Yi realized that he had been focused on cultivation and hadn't paid attention to the city's development. Taizhou, where he lives, although it was one of the key provincial capitals of the Xia country before the spiritual revival, never made it into the top 3. Among the 100-plus cities, the top 3 were Shenzhou, Tianzhou, and Kangzhou. Besides them, there are other cities as well. Now every city is beginning to gather information and report on the number and strength of its pioneers, developing local combat power. The stronger the pioneers, the higher the city's ranking and the more resources it will receive. More and more independent pioneers wish to join associations in various cities. Everyone needs hope that they can see on the path of evolution. However, the association will protect individuality and privacy. The main thing is to create an aura of mystery. They can speculate, blurring the line between reality and fiction. Fan Yi said that a moderate amount of mystery is far wiser than complete openness. Lin Yi added that imagination can sometimes be a greater limiting factor than reality. Fan Yi said he had no objections. It was beneficial for both him and his loved ones. He looked forward to a pleasant collaboration and extended his hand to the director. The director shook the young man's hand and said he was pleased to be working with the gravedigger. After that, with the full cooperation of the association and the military, the city returned to normal life at an incredible speed. Repairs and aid to the victims were carried out in an organized manner. The disaster accelerated the restoration of order, and life began to return to normal. At the association's headquarters, people were asking, is the gravedigger the very same pioneer who eliminated the S-rank anomaly? He is the one attracting the most attention. He possesses a high-grade sun element, the opposite of the attribute of darkness, a true chosen one of the heavens. According to data uploaded from Taizhou, he possesses more than one such element. He has the strike of heavenly fire and the element of lightning, thanks to which he became famous in the war zone as a tyrant. And that's not all, there's something even more incredible. The project manager asked, are they really discussing the gravedigger? She requested all relevant files. The woman reviewed the information and added that more and more pioneers are beginning to make a name for themselves. It must be that many who haven't seen his abilities with their own eyes aren't convinced of his power. The woman said that even she would like to witness his mastery firsthand. Zhangzhou City Library. As always, the place was bustling. Shu King Li was sitting at a desk in the library, processing the necessary information. A young man approached the girl asking for the information he needed. Qing Li closed her laptop and said that this was a library, and the young man was disturbing those around him. The young man was upset and walked away. The girl thought that there were nothing but boring young people here. Do library visitors really have no idea about the changes happening in the world, she wondered. Shu King Li stayed in Guangzhou for a few days and didn't expect so much to happen. After finishing her exams, she gained spiritual energy, becoming a pioneer at the first star level of the Ghost Axe. Perhaps that was why she had managed to avoid disaster in Taizhou. The girl thought that ordinary people couldn't fight. They simply had nothing to fight with. What could they possibly do? Shu Qinglai recalled how Fan Yi had introduced her as his classmate. The girl thought that, judging by his calm demeanor, those bats must have sucked him dry long ago. How wrong she was to think that this genius was in any way similar to that good-for-nothing guy. King Li thought that the gravedigger was 1,000 times better than him. Only such a strong and handsome trailblazer was worthy of a girl like her. Fang Yi said that they would take a proper rest today, even though finding a place to live remained their goal. Lin Yi asked her cousin, can we really skip training today? The young man replied that days off were rare. A good balance between work and rest was necessary. The association's proposal made sense. In addition to training, they needed to devote time to improving their living conditions. Lin Yi thought that Captain Su Qinying had said the same thing. She had insisted that their living conditions really needed to be changed. Lin Yi never expected Captain Su to have such connections. She hadn't even dreamed of such luxurious accommodations. Su Jinying said she would simply give them 2 apartments. Fang Yi asked, what's the big deal? We're entering an era of spiritual energy revival. People understand the value of a sufficiently powerful pioneer. No house can compare to that. Lin Yi said that all of this was making her head spin. Lin Yi sniffed the air and asked, can you smell that stench, cousin? Fan Yi added that it smelled as if a sewer pipe had burst. Something's wrong here. He's never smelled anything like this before. Lin Yi suggested that maybe the workers had accidentally hit a sewer pipe. Fan Yi said that someone was following them. The young people looked back and saw strangers. One of them called out, gravedigger! The man said he understood. There really was a gravedigger in front of him. The man said that this guy was a pathetic product of marketing, a pretty boy with no real strength. How could anyone promote such a boy to captain? The man added that they were brothers and had to teach this guy a lesson. Lin Yi prepared to resist. Lin Yi warned her cousin that all these people were of the soul creation rank. Fan Yi was surprised. What kind of trash dared to rob him in broad daylight? The young man activated his fire magic. Under the influence of the external force, the older brother lost his balance and was sent flying far backward. He couldn't believe what was happening to him. The villain was surprised, for this man had fallen under the effect of his all-penetrating potion, saturated with spiritual energy. He should have been completely numb and paralyzed. The universal all-pervading potion was brewed by a pioneer with the wood element and the ability to paralyze. For some reason, the potion had an unpleasant, horrible smell. The middle brothers said they had simply relaxed. With the rank of soul creation, there was nothing to fear. This time, the young man wouldn't escape them. Yi thought that these were mutated earth and wood elements. Such dirty and underhanded tricks fit their flawed style perfectly. A regular spiritual energy shield wouldn't have helped against them. However, such tricks don't work on our hero. Lin Yi showed what she was capable of and counterattacked one of the brothers, striking him with a kick to his most vulnerable spot. Yi said he really didn't want to cause a commotion, but he couldn't let his daily life be disrupted like this. It was extremely exhausting. Yi told his cousin to step aside. The young man was determined. The brothers were terrified. "What is that flame? Is it really the gravedigger?" Su Jinying said that these people weren't dead yet. Could the young man spare at least one of them? Xinying added that these men were priority targets under the association's surveillance. The captain noted that she would take them with her. The association had begun registering all pioneers to improve oversight, especially those like these. Yi didn't like being interfered with. He said that if these guys dared to bother him again, it wouldn't end so easily. This time, they were lucky to have survived. Su Qinying thought that if this had happened 2 days ago, the association wouldn't even have intervened in a fight between pioneers. The gravedigger had spared them only out of respect for the association. Su Qinying noted that these brothers were real fools for daring to challenge the number one, who was officially backed by the association. Lin Yi asked Captain Su, "What punishment awaits these men?" The captain replied that they had criminal records and faced life imprisonment. They would never see freedom again and would have no rights. Su Jinying thought that the person standing before her was a true asset to the association, the future of the Jia nation. But there were still plenty of fools who kept charging headlong into danger. The association must win over more powerful pioneers and invest resources in their growth. Under no circumstances should they destroy the good relationships that Yi had worked so hard to build. Su Qinying suggested they start looking for a new car and villa. The punishment of these brothers should serve as an example to others. The association selected 2 properties, a penthouse on the top floor in the city center with a beautiful view, convenient for everyday life. The 3-story villa is located in the mountains near the water and is ideal for spiritual practices. Qinying noted that both properties were fully furnished and had been renovated by a designer. There was no need for additional expenses. They could move in right away. Lin Yi remarked that the locations were excellent. Yi said that in that case, they would take both properties right away. Lin Yi asked in surprise, "Is that really possible?" Yi replied that he trusted Captain Su's sincerity. It was time to choose a car. Qinying said that the association had a partnership with a dealership. They could choose a car there. Passers-by began to take notice of the young people, especially the girl. She had fair skin and a pleasant aura. The young man also seemed unusual. Although he was dressed simply, he gave the impression of a strong person. It was impossible not to notice him. Who was he? Passers-by speculated that the young man had come here to buy a car for his girlfriend. Someone recognized the young man. "Isn't that Xu Qingli's ex-boyfriend? He's the one with connections in the military who was personally greeted by the director." The girl sent her friend a photo of the young people and said that her roommate's ex-boyfriend was buying a car for another girl. A short while later, Xu Qingli received the photo with the accompanying comments. Qingli thought in surprise, "Where did this guy get all that money?" Apparently, the disaster in Taizhou hadn't destroyed him. On the contrary, he'd been incredibly lucky. Now he was living off his rich girlfriend. Xu Qingli thought that the gap between them wasn't so easy to bridge. Once she reached the top among the pioneers, these mundane trifles would cease to matter. Yi and Lin Yi arrived at the new villa. The girl was overjoyed. Yi reminded her that they still had a penthouse in the city center. Now they could move from place to place. Lin Yi ran up the stairs and said she wanted to see what was up there. Yi thought that only now was his cousin acting her age and not trying to seem grown up. Yi thought that in their past life, they hadn't even met once. She must have been a reliable pioneer. He couldn't let her come under fire from responsibility and perish. Phone rang. It was Galan. She congratulated our hero on his promotion and informed him that he was now a captain. Galan added that she knew about the 2 properties donated by the association. Yi replied that he liked that too. Galan noted that a powerful pioneer like Fan Yi surely looked down on worldly riches. However, improving living conditions was always a good thing. She added that the first batch of spiritual fruits to appear since the beginning of the revival would soon be harvested. She would send some over for a taste. Galan thought that the gap between ordinary people and pioneers was a matter of power. It also reflected a difference in worldview, but the difference between a top-tier pioneer and an ordinary pioneer was even greater. Galan noted that she had a certain task and needed the young man. I wonder if he'll be interested in this. Fan Yi realized why Galan had actually called him. Galan asked if the young man knew the Tienbao Tower in Guangzhou. Fan Yi said it was the largest shopping mall in the city. Galan informed him that it had recently been sealed off. The residents were complaining endlessly. Many people had died there due to an anomaly. Now the tower is a real haunted house. The Tienbao Tower is a landmark of Guangzhou and the city's busiest mixed-use building. It has become the face of the city. However, recently, due to frequent anomalous occurrences, various incidents have begun to take place here. The association had no choice but to seal off the building. Fan Yi arrived in the city on a mission from the Star Military Zone. Halan warned him not to reveal his identity or rank. The young man couldn't determine the exact ranks of those who met him. They were all concealing their powers. Judging by their attire, 2 of them were from the military district. The young people greeted each other. The 2 who had come to meet him seemed similar to Su Qinying. They were likely also from the association. The girl said that Officer Galan had already briefed them. The driver announced that for the duration of this mission, they would all become a temporary team, even though he didn't even know how strong everyone was. The girl emphasized that they had to agree on one thing. As soon as they went inside, they had to help each other. Fan Yi realized that this time, the participants had been gathered from all over. The city was well known, but the members of its association varied in ability. One of the young men was staring intently at our hero. He asked his colleague, "Didn't Galan say she sent the Grand Master to us? Could this be him?" The girl said she wasn't sure either. "This guy looks like an ordinary student. He isn't wearing an official bracelet, his aura is hidden, and it's impossible to gauge his power. Could this really be the barrier who single-handedly suppressed the catastrophe and saved the city from destruction? But could the barrier be this young? Possessing the 3 rare supreme elements, destroying an infinitely reproducing anomaly in the first stage of creation, sealing the king of anomalies, and subsequently breaking through on the spot, all of this was truly impressive." Galan was reviewing documents in the office of the Star Military Zone's military district. Suddenly, the phone rang. The caller reported that the Tienbao Tower had completely collapsed. Contact had been lost with everyone who had entered it. The concentration of anomalies had reached off-the-charts levels. Confirmed casualties were severe. Galan thought the situation was getting complicated again. She told the caller that the people she had sent would definitely not let them down. If the mission had been entrusted to them, there was no need to ask further questions. Such was the order of the Star Military Zone. The special unit pulled up to the tower. Fan Yi realized the situation was serious. There was something powerful inside, surpassing anything they'd encountered before. Stains resembling blood appeared on the windows. The girl noted that the tower was quite narrow inside. The building had 40 floors. It was the tallest in the city. More than 2,000 employees and visitors had been evacuated earlier. Some people were still inside when the building was completely sealed off. Guangzhou had previously sent rescue teams, but no one had returned. The girl said that the exact number of casualties was only an estimate. In reality, no one knows what is happening inside. Fan Yi asked if it was possible to contact anyone else. The answer was no. No one had made contact since the anomalies began. One of the expedition members recounted that on the 2nd day after the sealing, he had been helping from the outside. The building looked as if it had been abandoned for decades, even though it had originally been brand new. There weren't even silhouettes in the windows, just a thick fog. An attempt to use a window as an exit ended in tragedy. Fragments of bodies, gnawed by the anomalies, began falling out of it. After that, the anomalies grew stronger with each passing day. Less than a week had passed when the same thing happened again. Fan Yi noted that there was no communication with those inside, so the number of victims was based solely on the bodies and fragments found. The Guangzhou Association was far too irresponsible, to which the young man replied that they had no choice. Fan Yi thought that even though the association had been negligent in gathering information, there was no other option. The actual casualties were surely much higher. For ordinary people, the anomalies are insurmountable. Fan Yi said they couldn't delay any longer and ordered the squad to enter immediately. Some anomalies evolve by consuming living flesh. The higher the casualties, the worse it is inside. A young man stopped the protagonist. He said that even if the military had recommended obeying his orders, they should at least be informed of the plan of action. Fan Yi replied that there was no plan since they were currently operating blindly. First, they needed to go inside and assess the situation. The girl pointed out that this young man wasn't even officially registered. Everyone present had experience dealing with anomalies. As a commander, he should at least be aware of their capabilities. One of the team members remarked that the guy lacked experience without formal training. The girl added that there was no time for talk. They needed to get inside. This guy took on the mission because Officer Galan personally recommended him. Everyone is aware of her skills. Fan Yi thought that internal conflicts were the last thing they needed before the mission. Fan Yi said that if anyone didn't want to go in, they could stay outside. The young man turned around and headed toward the tower on his own. The squad reached the first floor of the building. The girl was surprised. "Why is it so quiet here?" An anomaly flew swiftly overhead. The young man looked up and screamed in fear. The anomaly was charging straight at him. Fan Yi reacted in time, activated the flaming sword, and destroyed the approaching anomaly with a single swing. The squad saw that it was all over. The anomaly was destroyed. But where did this guy get that blade? How could he react so quickly? Fan Yi picked up a feather from the ground, sniffed it, and said it was a hybrid of a bird and a gecko. With that level of mutation, it must have already devoured many. The anomaly specialist noted that this was an A+ level anomaly. The young man said that an A+ level was equivalent to the second star of soul creation, but personally, he had only just broken through to the first. Fan Yi stopped and assessed the scale of the disaster. One of the young men said he hadn't expected the newcomer to actually be a gravedigger. In their minds, he was a recluse who never parted with his sword. Fan Yi explained that after one of his breakthroughs, he had fused his blade with spiritual energy, transforming it into a spiritual weapon that he could summon and shape at will. He wasn't the only one capable of this. Fan Yi urged the squad to move faster. There was no time to spare. Fan Yi used fire to light the way. The squad followed him, climbing to the upper floors. Fan Yi assessed the scale of the disaster and estimated that the casualties could reach 500 people. Everything was empty, nothing but blood. Anomalies feed on flesh, but leave absolutely nothing behind. A massive anomaly appeared behind the young people. Someone shouted, "Danger behind us!" Fan Yi was once again the first to react and destroyed the anomaly with his flaming sword. He was surprised. Hadn't anyone else present sensed that something was wrong? The protagonist noted that these two anomalies were elite level. However, with so few rescue teams, total destruction shouldn't have occurred. Perhaps this place wasn't the real Tienbao building. The girl asked what the commander meant. The commander explained they had encountered blood along the way, but the stench and heaviness emanated only from the element of darkness and the anomalies, not from actual bodies. Fan Yi thought that right now they were like blind flies. They needed to test their hunch. The young man had only one question. Should they reveal the boundless dark world to the others? The girl said the commander was right. Everything looked tragic, but this hopelessness didn't stem from mass death. It was emptiness, nothingness, as if living beings had never existed here. Like a simple, empty model, Fan Yi confirmed the theory. If he was right, this place had been transformed by an anomaly into an empty shell. The call of the boundless dark world had been activated. The pioneers were surprised. Could this really be an element of darkness? An analog of the element of darkness was discovered, the inner world of darkness. This space, created by the elements of darkness, is a nest of darkness capable of swallowing the original space, much like the zone of extreme darkness and the boundless dark world. To enter the true inner world of darkness, one must find its gate. Fan Yi explained that a gate is needed to enter the current Tienbao building. The same applies to those trying to escape. They are all under the influence of darkness. Their minds and emotions are distorted by hallucinations, which is why they mistook the windows for an exit. The girl said that they must find these gates. A message came in. The inner world of darkness has been drawn by its counterpart. The inner world of darkness has manifested. Fan Yi confirmed, "It is here." The pioneers cried out. They were being attacked by elements of darkness. Why isn't the spiritual shield working? Something is trying to invade their minds. Fan Yi quickly set up a protective barrier. The pioneers noted that they now felt much better. Could this really have been a direct attack by an element of darkness? Everyone was surprised. Why didn't it affect the graver at all? One of the young men said that the darkness had nearly crushed them even before it touched them. Without the burial master, they wouldn't have lasted long. Fan Yi said he had found the gate. It was right here. The young man activated an energy attack. Under the external influence, the gate swung open. The passage was clear. Fan Yi warned them, everyone must stay close together. The girl said she could already smell it. The end is near. The rescue team found themselves in a huge room. There was blood everywhere, and bodies scattered about. The pioneers looked up and saw a massive anomaly above them. It was yet another A+ level anomaly of the element of darkness. The situation seemed unbelievable. Fan Yi instantly drew his sword and engaged the anomaly. The full release of his inner flame was activated. The powerful fire instantly melted the anomaly. The pioneers noted that the commander didn't need their help at all. His fire seemed to contain an admixture of flames erupting like magma. Fan Yi told the victims that they were innocent, but the anomalies had caused them pain. Now these creatures would join them on their final journey. The pioneers were impressed. The commander had cremated all the victims with a single strike. His reputation was well-deserved. Fan Yi told the squad that they too had a job to do: search for survivors and rescue them. He would deal with the remaining anomalies himself. A report came in. The first floor had been cleared. They should move further up. The actual Tienbao building in the inner world of darkness turned out to be completely overrun by anomalies. The 10th floor had been completely scorched. The anomalies were destroyed. Following the mass destruction and devouring, the level of the anomalies has increased. Most of them are now at the first star level of soul creation, though their strength and abilities have increased only slightly. The protagonist ascended to the 15th floor. It was cold here. The element of darkness penetrated even through the spiritual shield. One of the pioneers noted that something was crawling over their bodies. It was a corrosive substance. One must exercise caution and avoid taking deep breaths. A massive anomaly appeared above the young man's head. He said, "Finally, something interesting." The monster tried to avoid a direct confrontation, writhing and darting from corner to corner. Fan Yi said that the anomaly was trying to buy time to evolve. Fan Yi reached out and declared that he had underestimated this anomaly. He had assumed it would be at least a 3rd-star soul creation level, but this monster didn't even slow him down. The door to the adjacent room creaked. The pioneers turned around in surprise. Behind the door were the survivors. A young man looked hopefully at the rescue team. "Are you the pioneers?" The young man said there were 5 of them left here. It was a secret room, resembling a warehouse for a major brand. The people were frozen with fear. Fan Yi told the survivors that everything was fine now. They had come to rescue them. The pioneer reported that they were from the City Association. All the monsters outside had already been destroyed. Now the people were safe and could come out. The young man asked, "Did the pioneers destroy those terrifying monsters with a single blow?" The people watching from outside the Tienbao building felt a glimmer of hope. On every floor, the light from the graver flames was visible. They couldn't contact them, but they could detect faint spiritual waves. Experts reported that the rescue team was on the 40th floor. How much time had passed? It turned out that in 10 minutes, the graver had reached the top floor. This news will shock the entire community of the city's pioneers. At the same time,